The story takes place in a world with a class system, where these classes are considered blessings bestowed by the goddess. When they turn 10 years old, every child participates in a blessing ceremony to receive their class, along with its corresponding skills. Errol, who is 10 years old this year, sat quietly with his family. Everyone was curious about what class he would receive. Errol's father was so nervous he couldn't sleep all night. His older sister, on the other hand, was full of confidence, certain that her little brother would receive the best class. His father thought the family would have a lot of fans. His mother said Errol would become famous soon, while his sister teased that he was still too young to have a girlfriend. Errol knew that once his family started talking, they couldn't be stopped. When he heard the bell ringing from the temple, he stood up, ready to go. His parents, lost in their loving chatter, only noticed when Errol had already left the room. They hurriedly called him back, telling him not to abandon his family. His sister pouted because he had left without waiting for her. Errol's parents were so overjoyed they couldn't stop dancing. Errol lived in a small rural town where there was no permanent priest. Only once a year, a priest was sent to perform the ceremonies. And today was that day. Errol didn't want to miss the opportunity because if he did, he'd have to wait until next year. He reminded them that if they kept dancing, it would be dark before they even got there. Luckily, the whole family made it just in time. At that moment, the priest was announcing the results for another boy who had just received the blacksmith class. That boy was overjoyed because now he could work alongside his father. Next to him was a little girl who had also received the same class as her mother. People began to notice that most of the children were receiving the same classes as their parents. It seemed that the class of the head of the household had a strong influence on the class their children would receive. Errol's sister was certain that her brother would follow the family's path. Then the priest called the next name. This time it was Errol, son of Leon. Everyone expected him to follow in his family's footsteps. In his family, everyone belonged to a high class. Errol's mother was the sword queen Farah, and his father was the magic king Leon. Errol was confused by what people were saying. So a man explained to him that high classes were far superior to basic classes and were very difficult to obtain. However, Errol's parents had received their high classes right away because they were geniuses, so everyone expected their son to achieve the same. The priest asked Errol to close his eyes and began the ritual. But even after performing the steps, the priest saw no reaction at all. It was a case so rare it was unbelievable. Errol was declared classless. Everyone was stunned, because classes were a blessing from the goddess, and being classless meant being forsaken by her. Errol's mother, trying to comfort her son, said that no matter what, they would continue to work hard for him. As they spoke, his father also reassured him, telling him not to worry and reminding him not to even think about doing anything foolish. Hearing that, Errol angrily shouted that he had no intention of doing such a thing. Everyone around them was astonished by his reaction. Then his sister came over and hugged him, laughing and saying that even if he were a potato, she'd still love him just the same. Errol couldn't believe everyone's reaction. He said that it seemed like everyone else was sad, but he himself didn't feel disappointed at all. His family asked if he was sure. Errol replied that he had been training with his mother's sword since he was a child. Even though everyone around him thought it was useless since he didn't have a swordsman class, Errol continued to practice. He believed that even without innate skills, he could still achieve them through perseverance. Errol said that while someone else might be gifted with a swordsman's skill, he could still learn to wield a sword through his own effort. He emphasized that even without a class or skills, he had no reason to be sad or pessimistic. Errol's words made everyone happy and relieved to see him so optimistic and resilient. His father proudly said that Errol would go far in the future. His mother was happy that her son was such a smart and strong-willed child. Errol continued to train relentlessly, his determination growing stronger. As he left, he could hear his parents' and sisters' voices behind him, all proud and happy for him. Errol heard his parents and sister chatting, discussing how he would become a great man in the future. Meanwhile, he noticed a few boys his age practicing. Those boys were so enthusiastic that their bodies moved naturally. thanks to their skills. One of them approached and asked Errol if he was the classless boy everyone was talking about, and wanted to know why he was here. Errol calmly replied that he was here to train. The boys laughed, saying they didn't need to train because they were swordsmen. They only came to test out their skills. Then, one of them offered to show Errol their skills. Two of the boys began to coordinate, performing a display of swordsmanship. Although it was only at a basic level, thanks to their skills, their movements were very smooth and fluid. Errol watched them closely, then called out to the two boys and challenged them to a match. The boys burst out laughing, unable to believe his offer. Errol asserted that, in his opinion, it would be a good fight. You added that your mother is the Sword Queen, a swordswoman so incredibly strong that you've never been able to land a single hit on her. One of the two boys asked if Errol was kidding, then accepted the challenge. He then wanted to confirm whether Errol had divine protection since he was classless. Errol nodded, explaining that while classes are only granted at age 10, divine protection is with a person from birth. It's another blessing from the goddess. Errol explained that in this regard, he was no different from anyone else. Divine protection is like an invisible suit of armor that reduces physical damage, as if you're being shielded from all harm. One of the boys wanted to make sure that Errol's life wouldn't be in danger, even if he was hit hard. He reminded him that even with protection, a painful hit is still painful, and told Errol to brace himself. The duel began, and as soon as it started, the boy reminded Errol, a classless person, to stop messing around. However, Errol quickly dodged and blocked his opponent's attacks. Seeing this, the other boy encouraged his friend to defeat Errol, but Errol easily parried every blow. Errol was excited to be fighting opponents of similar skill, as it allowed him to practice what he'd been training for. Another boy watching the fight shouted out, telling his friend to attack Errol from a different angle. However, when his opponent turned to respond, Errol realized that their skills improved their movements but didn't enhance their tactics or combat awareness. Seizing the opportunity while his opponent was distracted, Errol quickly launched his attack. Before the two boys could even understand what was happening, Errol had gained the upper hand. Errol approached the two boys, but one of them quickly stepped in front of him. The opponent yelled at Errol for getting close, shouting that he would cut him to pieces as he charged forward. But in the blink of an eye, Errol had defeated them both. Errol wondered if he had truly won, but the two boys refused to admit defeat. They claimed it didn't count because Errol had attacked while they were distracted and called him a coward. Errol just smiled and asked if they wanted a rematch. The boys nodded, ready to continue, but suddenly another young man stepped forward and stopped them. He told them not to embarrass themselves as swordsmen, asking what good excuses like that would be in a real battle. Errol didn't object. He didn't mind another chance to practice. The two boys curiously asked who the newcomer was, and then they suddenly remembered that he was a red-haired swordsman. He turned to Errol and asked if he was the son of the Sword Queen, Farah, and Errol responded with a nod. The swordsman pondered, wondering if someone classless like Errol could truly inherit his parents' abilities. He then declared that the other two boys were just an appetizer and that he would be Errol's next opponent. He told Errol to be proud, but not just for beating two easy opponents. The new swordsman said he would show Errol the true strength of a swordsman. He demanded a duel with Errol. This guy looked angry and practically shouted when he saw Errol spacing out. Errol didn't understand why this guy was so hostile toward him, especially since this was the first time they had ever met. Around them, people started whispering about the new guy. His red hair was identical to the head of the city's police force. And for good reason, because his father, Evans, was indeed the chief. Errol knew his father, Evans, who often came to his mother with requests to slay monsters. He remembered the face of the man named Evans, but he saw no resemblance at all between this guy and him. Errol wondered if this guy would one day become a plain old man like his father. The newcomer then began to praise his father, calling him the most talented man there was. In addition to his skill with a sword, he possessed leadership and decisiveness, which earned him great respect. Although Errol's mother was considered the strongest swordswoman, this guy was unwilling to acknowledge it. Errol slowly realized this guy was trying to prove something. He admired his own father, but he also wanted to surpass the fame of Arl's mother. Errol understood. This guy's anger was all about their parents. He shouted, assuming Errol must think his own mother was the strongest. Arl calmly replied that yes, his mother was considered the strongest in the world, but he wasn't particularly proud of her leadership skills. Only her strength. The other guy retorted that parents' skills are often passed down to their children. He was confronting Arel because he wanted to prove that his own family deserved the title of the strongest family. He had been training non-stop since becoming a swordsman a year ago, learning the art of the sword from his father. Thanks to his rigorous training, he had reached an intermediate skill level, something that normally takes 3 years. He declared that there was no way he would lose to someone like Arel. Errol just smiled and said he understood, recognizing that this guy truly respected his father and was desperately trying to prove his family's worth. Arl, though his opponent had trained hard in swordsmanship with his father, also had a foundation from his mother, a true sword master. He said he wouldn't lose easily, recalling how his mother had strictly forged his skills into him. When his rival declared the duel, they both began to move with their swords drawn, and the surrounding students watched the match tensely, as if it were a real battle. Many of those watching were amazed to see Arl could keep up with his opponent's intermediate skills. The match was a back and forth, as both sides tried to anticipate and counter the other's attacks. Suddenly, his opponent unleashed a dual attack using a double slash skill, leaving Errol no time to react. His opponent taunted him, asking how Arl could possibly block that attack from this distance. Errol was stunned, unable to understand how the attack could have come from both sides at once. His opponent explained that it was a powerful attack skill called Flash Cut, which allowed him to land 2 sword strikes in a single swing. Obviously, for someone without skills like Arel, blocking such an attack should have been impossible. But to everyone's surprise, Errol still managed to block one of the 2 strikes. He shot back, taunting his opponent by asking if he wanted to try that again. After the match, Arel returned home, and the next day, he was daydreaming about what had happened, even fantasizing about girls. He was woken from his dream by his older sister, who joked that a certain someone had come to wake him. Arel laughed and replied that he was awake. The 2 of them were as close as any brother and sister. When he went downstairs, he saw his mother had prepared breakfast, and he thanked her for the meal. Arel announced that he was going out. Ever since he was defeated by Evan's son, Errol had started leaving the house early and coming back late. His sister was getting worried, but their mother reassured her by pointing to the swords in the corner of the room, the ones Errol had been using ever since the day he lost. She explained that after that duel, Arl had found a new motivation and had become more determined than ever. His sister was thrilled to see her younger brother so full of life again. The mother asked her daughter about her father, and she replied that he was still sleeping, just like Errol used to. They laughed about how similar Errol and his father were. Ever since that match, Errol had been training relentlessly every day in the forest, trying to learn how to defend against the double slash skill, the move that had caused his defeat. He could still clearly remember how his opponent had executed the blow, making it look almost like magic. Errol's opponent had told him that if he improved his physical strength, he could perform higher-level skills. Errol wondered if he could develop enough physical strength to perform the double slash himself, without a special skill. If he could, he would be one step closer to breaking his limits without relying on a class or any gifted skills. Errol was determined to do whatever it took to gain that skill. He recalled the movements his red-haired opponent had made and told himself that one day he would find new ways to learn beyond what his mother had taught him. Suddenly, a small goblin attacked him. Errol quickly used the new techniques he'd been learning to take down the monster, and he felt he was becoming quite skilled at fighting them. The remaining goblins fled before he could find them. He liked the forest because he could train without being disturbed by anyone, even though it was dangerous at times. As it started to get dark, Arl prepared to head home. On his way, He discovered the tracks of a large enemy at the foot of the mountain and was about to report it to the city guard. But then he heard the desperate scream of a child. Errol told himself that if someone was being attacked, there was no time to run and get help. Confident he was strong enough to handle it, Errol moved forward cautiously. He was planning to keep his distance, but then he realized it was his old rival from the training grounds. Errol couldn't see clearly what he was fighting. But then he realized they were hobgoblins, large goblins capable of sending someone flying with a single strike. It dawned on Errol that his rival was probably also training in the forest, just like him. The goblins moved slowly but possessed incredible strength. He was glad to see the goblin had its back to him. It was about to attack Errol's rival, so he quickly planned to strike it down before it could launch another blow. His rival was panicking, telling the goblin to stay away. But it was clear he knew he couldn't move fast enough to escape. Just then, Errol attacked from behind, taking the goblin down much more easily than he'd expected. Errol's sparring partner breathed a sigh of relief when he saw the goblin defeated, even though he had just narrowly avoided a fatal blow. Despite having divine protection, his protective layer was still pierced by the goblin's cut, making him realize he wasn't as invincible as he thought. Errol said they needed to recover their health as quickly as possible and asked about holy water. But his opponent told him that his holy water had shattered during the fight. Errol then handed him his own bottle of holy water. After drinking it, his opponent fully recovered and asked about the attack Errol used to take down the goblin. He was stunned when Errol revealed it was the double cut. The opponent couldn't fathom how Errol had managed to learn that technique. Errol explained that after their previous duel, he had spent a lot of time training. He added that he hates losing, and to ensure he could win next time, he had set a goal to master this technique, although he never expected to meet again under these circumstances. The redhead replied that if Errol had trained that hard, they should have a rematch right now. But Errol advised him not to push himself, suggesting they could fight anytime. However, the opponent insisted on repaying his debt as he felt indebted to Errol, especially since Errol had shared his holy water. Errol smiled, praising his strong sense of responsibility and saying he was truly a good person. They began their duel right after that. Errol used the double cut to attack, but his opponent couldn't block it. Even though he was certain he had blocked both strikes, he couldn't understand what had just happened. Errol explained to his opponent that the attack wasn't just 2 slashes, it was actually 3. He said it wasn't an official skill, but rather a technique he could improve through constant practice and by chaining his strikes together. His opponent was in shock. Even though he had seen it with his own eyes, he found it hard to believe that a true swordsman like himself had lost to Errol, someone without a class. He claimed that what Errol did was just mimicry, but Errol immediately suggested another duel to clearly decide who was stronger. The result was the same. Errol won again. He said that perhaps it would always be this way. After parting ways with his opponent, Errol returned home. At home, everyone was talking about Evan's son. They heard the boy had left for Brescia. Errol didn't know what Brescia was, so he asked his mother. His mother explained that Brescia is a famous city for swordsmen, and it's also where she worked before she got married. She added that it takes a week to get there by carriage. His mother mentioned that before getting married, she had joined the Swordsmen's Guild to pursue her passion for sword fighting. Errol's mother said her time in Brescia was a happy one, where she and her comrades trained in advanced skills. But she felt even more blessed to have her husband and family by her side. After hearing about Brescia, Errol couldn't stop thinking about the city. Sometime later, a group was departing for Brescia. The coachman announced that they would be there as soon as they passed through the gate. On the carriage, a woman asked a man if he was also on his way to Brescia. The man was surprised to learn that a woman like her was a swordsman. When asked about her profession, she replied that she was a rogue, a high-level class. Hearing this, the man looked disappointed and revealed that he was a gladiator. The woman wondered why the man seemed so displeased. Even though he had a high-level class, the man replied that he was annoyed to be on the same level as a woman like her. Just then, the coachman noticed a group of orcs blocking the road ahead. and there was even an orc king among them. The coachman asked the man to prove his strength by defeating the monsters. However, the man said that a threat of this level required a monster extermination squad. He then ignored all the passengers' pleas for help, even their begging to at least protect the children. He declared that protecting himself was his top priority and ran away. The coachman also intended to make a quick getaway, but suddenly, a young boy charged towards the orcs. In the blink of an eye, the boy was in the middle of the monsters. Everyone was amazed to see he was strong enough to face them all by himself. However, all the orcs quickly surrounded him and asked what he planned to do. The boy responded with fluid movements, dodging and attacking the orcs as if he were dancing, his sword swinging lightly, yet with great power. This confused everyone. Such graceful, dance-like movements in combat could usually only be mastered by a sword queen. No one could understand how a boy like him could have achieved such a skill. After defeating all the orcs single-handedly, he returned and asked the coachman to continue their journey. The coachman realized that the heroic boy who saved the entire convoy was Errol, now all grown up. When the coachman asked what Errol's class was, he simply replied that he was classless. The coachman looked skeptical, thinking Errol was hiding something and probably possessed an extremely powerful class. Remembering the incident on the road to Brescia 5 years ago, he couldn't believe someone without a class could pull something like that off. Meanwhile, Arel continued his training with determination. His mother, watching him train, wondered if Errol could really use the dual blade cut. Even though Arel confirmed it, she still thought she was dreaming, unable to believe that a boy not blessed by any class could master such a difficult technique. When Errol assured her that she wasn't dreaming, he asked his mother to teach him all the skills she knew. Arel's mother was incredibly excited and proud, shouting for everyone to hear that her son, Arel, was a true genius. Now, Arel was all grown up and had arrived in the city of Brescia. The coachman told Errol that this city was full of talented swordsmen with amazing skills. Arel, after a moment of observation, pointed out that the coachman himself was very talented. However, the coachman humbly denied it, insisting he was just a driver. Errol replied that based on how well the coachman understood fighting techniques, he must have once been a swordsman and had been very calm when facing the orcs. Errol said he was sure that if he hadn't defeated the orcs, the coachman would have handled them brilliantly. The coachman said that while he could have handled the orcs, that sort of thing just wasn't his style anymore. He revealed that he used to serve in the palace, where there were many rules to follow, and being a coachman now was much more interesting, as he got to meet all sorts of people. Before leaving, he encouraged Errol to do his best. Errol thought the coachman might belong to a high-tier class, perhaps a holy knight or something similar. While he was lost in thought, a girl suddenly appeared and fell over, complaining that Arel had kept dodging her without even looking. But she also insisted that it didn't mean he had the necessary skills. Arel was surprised, wondering what this girl was up to. She immediately asked if Arel was new and looking for a guild to join. Just as he'd planned, he was intending to join a guild. The girl excitedly said she was also looking for new members for her guild, and Errol began to suspect she had run into him on purpose. She cheerfully handed him a contract to join her guild, waiting for Errol's response, but he wasn't interested. The girl asked why he rejected the offer without even looking at it, and he replied that she was too desperate for new members, which suggested her guild was probably weak. The girl lied, claiming they were very famous, but Errol easily saw through it. She offered to go on a date with him if he joined the guild, but he said he wasn't interested in a girl like Lilia. The interaction with the girl felt like he had been through this before. He remembered how his girlfriend used to act the same way. He decided to find a strong and famous guild. He noticed a large open area where guilds were advertising themselves. He started applying to a few guilds, but everyone rejected him because he was classless. He was frustrated that people turned him away just by looking at his application. Then he remembered the letter of recommendation his mother had written for him. At first, he thought his mother was just being overprotective. But her thinking had indeed been far-sighted and correct. Errol decided to find the guild his mother used to be a part of. As Errol was sitting with an annoyed look on his face, the girl appeared out of nowhere, asking if he'd found a guild. He remarked that it seemed she hadn't given up hope. She started getting closer, saying that because they were short on members, their very survival was at stake. Errol pointed out that had nothing to do with him. The girl followed him and begged him to save them. He arrived at the area where his mother's guild was located. The girl was there too and pointed to a large building, saying that was their guild. He was surprised and asked why they were short on members. The girl explained that their former glory had vanished and they were now the weakest guild. She was determined to bring glory back to the guild as it once was. The girl declared that her guild, Dragonfang, was invincible. Errol remembered that this was the very guild his mother had joined. He knew the name came from his master's technique, called the Dragon Fang Cut, also known as the Kaika Dragon Bite. Errol realized this was the guild his mother had mentioned. The girl led him to the reception room. A man who was drinking asked if he was a new recruit. It was the girl's father, who was also a dual-wielding swordmaster. He was missing his right arm and told everyone to give up on this guild. She explained that he used to be a famous swordsman, but after losing his arm, he had become a drunkard. She was worried that Errol wouldn't join their guild after seeing its condition. However, Errol confirmed that he still wanted to join. She was ecstatic and hurriedly filled out his application form. When she found out he had no class, she thought it was some kind of sick joke. But Errol made it clear that he wasn't kidding and showed her his job certificate. She was shocked and cried out when she learned the truth. She said that people who join a guild should be swordsmen or knights. At the very least, they should know some kind of skill. She couldn't believe that someone as arrogant as him was classless. But then a woman entered the room and asked what was wrong with Lilia. Her name was Reina. Reina said she heard Lilia screaming. Lilia explained that the new member was classless. Reina was shocked when she saw Errol, but Errol didn't remember who she was. She said that she was from the same village and they had even dueled before. Errol was confused that he couldn't remember a beauty like her. All he remembered was fighting a boy with a similar hair color. That was Evan's son, but Reina clarified that Evans only had one daughter, her. Errol was shocked to find out he thought Reina was a boy during their childhood because she had short hair back then. Errol thought she was a boy and apologized for the mix-up. Reina told him to just forget about it. The next morning, Lilia wished him a good morning and asked if he slept well last night. Sleeping in a real bed felt like heaven to him. Lilia said she had an important announcement to make in front of everyone. She said that since they had gathered a total of 3 people, they were now eligible to participate in the guild competition. Lilia wanted to participate in the upcoming guild war next week. Errol asked if it was going to be a team battle, but Lilia explained that it would be a battle royale. The last one standing wins. Lilia further explained that the maximum number of participants is 10, so they would likely be fighting 3 against 10. It seemed impossible, but she said they couldn't afford to lose this match. She and Reina had earned enough money through single battles or subjugation quests, but the income to keep the guild running had reached its limit. If they couldn't win the prize money next week, they would lose their home. She wanted to win at all costs. She said that in the battle, there probably wouldn't be any A ranks. And since Lilia and Reina were both B ranks, she was confident they would be strong enough. Errol didn't understand what the ranking system was. This was the first time he'd ever heard of it. Lilia explained that their ranks were divided into 4 tiers, A, B, C, and D. Out of the approximately 500 swordsmen in the city, only 20 were A rank. Both Reina and Lilia were B rank. Then she explained that the chances of facing an A rank opponent were very slim, if not 0. She was going to go check on their enemies. Reina said that until that day came, she would continue to train. She was about to leave when Errol called her name. She didn't like the way he addressed her. Errol asked her what other skills she had besides superhuman strength. She said she had the skill sturdiness, which minimizes the degradation of divine protection, meaning she could reinforce her divine protection. Arel wanted to learn that skill. He grabbed her hand and asked if she could hit him with her sword, but Reina didn't want to do that. Errol said it was a way for them to get closer, but she misunderstood what he meant. She got embarrassed and didn't know what kind of act would please him. She said she wanted to start with a normal friendship, but Errol realized there was a huge misunderstanding going on. He clarified that he wanted her to hit him because he wanted to copy the sturdiness skill. He wanted to be able to endure more hits. He was thinking of taking a hit while his protection was inactive. He wanted to make his skill more effective, so he wanted to be hit by someone with a strong attack power. She was disappointed by that. She said that skills are blessings they receive from the goddess, and Errol couldn't learn them just like that. Arel disputed that theory and asked Reina to put her sword down. Reina said he wouldn't be able to lift it, but he swung the sword anyway. She was amazed to see that he could swing her sword without using superhuman strength. He said he could use still image and double-edged blade. He explained that thanks to his harsh daily training, he was able to copy skills. In his opinion, Reina can't win against sheer effort. Reina said that if effort was worthless, then she would just be an ordinary swordswoman. After seeing everything that had happened, Reina understood. She agreed to take part in his special training program. She also mentioned that she would fight him seriously. Errol was happy to see that Reina was a good-hearted woman. She asked Errol to stop teasing her. After that, they started training. A while later, Lilia returned, announcing to everyone that today they would be fighting Black Blade, currently the top guild with A-rank members. She said their leader would surely form a team to completely annihilate them. Lilia advised everyone that they needed to train harder, but then she noticed Arl was injured and covered in blood. She thought Reina and Arl had fought, but Reina explained it was just a special training session. Errol said he was hungry and asked for breakfast, but Lilia suggested he really needed to drink some holy water. A few days passed, and the day of the guild battle arrived. They arrived at the arena, where everyone was talking about Dragonfang, saying the guild had fallen. Some people were even discussing bets for the match. Everyone was certain that Black Blade would win. Lilia found that insulting. Errol realized the whole reason for the arena was betting, with the potential payout for betting on them being as high as 20 times. This definitely wasn't a good thing, as it showed no one expected them to win. But it was also a perfect opportunity to make the money they needed. Lilia said she would use all their money to bet on themselves. If they won, they would be financially secure. The leader of Black Blade approached Lilia, praising her efforts to protect her father's guild. He then mocked them, saying he'd heard a classless person had joined them. The leader, Gorge, said it was sad to see a once-rival guild fall so low. He explained how he had arranged a middleman so they could fight each other. He said this was a perfect chance for Lilia to make some extra money and encouraged them to do their best. But Lilia, Reina, and Arl knew Gorge had no intention of helping them. That guy still wanted to crush every guild he came across. Arl was wondering why Reina was in their guild. She explained that when she arrived in the city that day, no guild wanted to accept her, but he praised her for not giving up, despite being rejected by every guild. She had also been mistaken for a boy by Errol. He offered to let her join their guild, and that was Lilia's father, who saved her when she was cast aside. This was her time to save him. Lilia then said that Arel was also saved by her guild, so she suggested he repay his debt. But Arel said that she was the one who forced him to join her guild. The battle was about to begin. Black Blade and Dragonfang were in the arena. There were 4 A-rankers in Black Blade, but their leader wasn't among them. Arl wondered if the leader was holding back against them. But according to Reina, he was as fired up as ever. The announcer began to call out the names of the fighters. The first one from Black Blade was the rapier swordsman, Geo. He stepped forward, declaring he would end the match by himself. Next up was Errol from Dragonfang. When he was announced as being classless, the audience was shocked. They wondered if the announcer was joking, but they all found it exciting to watch Arel start defeating the A-rankers. Before long, Errol had defeated 9 people all by himself. Everyone wondered how he could possibly be classless. Lilia was also shocked to see how strong Arel was. She asked why Reyna hadn't told her about this. Reyna hadn't expected him to be like this either, since she hadn't seen him in 5 years. Lilia said she needed to get ready immediately after the match. Reyna wondered if this was for a celebration, but she clarified that it was for a wedding. She said that if she could secure Errol, the guild would do well. She didn't want to let him get away. Just then, the 10th fighter from Black Blade stepped forward. His name was Masamune. Wielding a thin, curved sword, he's a high-ranking samurai from the west, and it was the first time Lilia and Reyna had ever seen him. He's like the Black Blade Guild's secret weapon. Errol could feel the pressure even before the samurai drew his sword. He knew that a single careless move would cost him the match. The samurai said that no ordinary technique could defeat Errol, so he was planning to use a single killer blow. Even after hearing the samurai's plan, Errol didn't back down. He said he couldn't let the situation become a stalemate and expressed his interest in seeing this so-called killer technique. The samurai said that would be impossible, because the moment he activated his skill, Errol would already be on the ground. But Errol insisted that he was confident in his own speed and was already calculating how to defend against it. The samurai didn't draw his sword immediately. His concentration was so intense that you couldn't get near him. He was certain that the faster man would be the victor. The samurai attacked instantly, thinking he had gained the upper hand on Errol. But when he opened his eyes, he realized Errol had vanished. The samurai knew Errol wasn't using an illusion technique. Errol had simply moved faster than his own blade. The samurai commented that Errol must be the fastest person in the city, but Errol replied that he'd learned the skill from someone even faster, his mother. He declared that he would now use his mother's killer technique. Then, he attacked the samurai with a sword strike called Piercing Tempest. Reyna recognized the myriad of sword strikes and knew it was the Sword Princess's signature killer technique. The audience couldn't even grasp what had happened, as Errol was too fast for the eye to see, and with that, the moment of judgment came. Errol was declared the winner. The Dragonfang Guild had defeated Black Blade. Lilia and Reyna were overjoyed, while many others were disappointed with George because they had bet on Black Blade. Some were even demanding their money back from him. Lilia was so happy that the moment she saw Errol, she leaped in for a hug, but Errol dodged it, saying it was a habit of his to evade anyone who lunged at him. Reyna felt a bit sheepish for having gotten so carried away in the moment. The three of them later celebrated their victory with drinks. Lilia was drinking alcohol, while the other two had juice. Errol was quite surprised to learn that Lilia was older than Reyna. But then, Lilia suddenly proposed marriage to Errol. Though he rejected the idea, Lilia tried to persuade him by moving closer, telling him he could fulfill all of his desires with her. But Errol had no such intentions and said that he prefers women like Reyna. Reyna was shocked to hear this. She told Errol to come up with a better lie if he was going to turn Lilia down. But Errol insisted he wasn't lying. Reyna couldn't understand how he could say that to her. She was always told she acted like a man because she was a swordswoman. Unlike Lilia, who was always cute with her hair accessories. She thought it was impossible for someone to like a woman who didn't act feminine. She felt that as a swordswoman, she wasn't suited for such feelings. Lilia understood that Reyna was pretty hopeless with romantic feelings, so she felt assured that she wouldn't become Reyna's rival in attracting Errol. She asked Errol if he was tired and offered to help him relax. But Errol wanted Reyna to do it instead. His divine protection was fading, so he wanted to learn a solid skill. Lilia was annoyed that Errol only seemed to have Reyna on his mind. But just then, her father interrupted, calling her careless. She informed him of their victory against Black Blade, and her father assumed Black Blade must have been at their worst. Lilia corrected him, saying they had 4 A-rank members. She explained that it was Errol who had single-handedly defeated the guild. She also added that thanks to the win, they had earned enough money to stay afloat. She believed that with Errol, they could restore the guild to its former glory. However, her father said that someone as strong as Errol would just move on to another guild right away. She replied that Errol was going to marry her, But Errol insisted that he had never made such a promise. Errol thought Lilia was naive, but she was still better than someone who had given up. Errol blamed her father for giving up so easily, saying it was irresponsible of him when he could still wield a sword with just one hand. Her father got angry hearing this. He grabbed Errol and said that Errol knew nothing about him. The man said that the moment he lost his two swords, he lost half of his strength. Errol couldn't understand any of it since he didn't have any skills himself. The man left after the conversation. Lilia thanked Errol and said his lecture might have worked. She said that if she and Reina had said something, Errol would have just treated it as a joke. Errol planned to show off his skills. Reina said that Errol loves learning other people's skills. Lilia cut in and mentioned a place where Errol could learn many skills. There's a huge labyrinth underground beneath the city, a dungeon with traps and areas full of magical monsters. Errol couldn't understand why on earth they would allow such a thing, but Lilia explained that it was a perfect training ground for swordsmen and that it was created by the gods. She also mentioned that the place was really famous and that she would let Errol know tomorrow, since it's very dark inside the dungeon. Lilia was hoping a romance would blossom between her and Errol. Errol asked Reina what they should do, and Reina said they would go because she wanted to participate in the Divinity Tournament. The Divinity Tournament is a battle to decide who is the strongest in the city. They gave Errol a registration form to participate, but he tore it up right after glancing at it. Reina was shocked and asked what was wrong, wondering if he didn't want to join, but Errol explained that it was a marriage registration form. Reina mocked Lilia for her foolish act. A woman was observing them in a magical liquid, assigned by George, the leader of the Black Blade Guild. They were watching them using magic. She informed George that the team would be moving to the labyrinth tomorrow, which he had expected. The father sensed that an unexpected enemy was approaching them. He said that no one would come to help and that everything depended on their own strength. The next morning, Lilia woke Errol up. She was naked and asked him if last night had been difficult. Errol said his head was about to explode. He was shocked to see she had entered his room and asked her what she was doing there, an unmarried girl in his room alone. He then called her a pervert. She apologized for sneaking into his room. He told her not to do it again, but she said there was no need to worry as long as he became her husband. She wanted to do something that married couples do, but Errol refused and left the room. Lilia cried, wondering if he was even a healthy boy. She couldn't understand how he could just leave a naked beauty like her all alone. Errol then went to Reina's room and knocked. She asked if he needed a moment. He asked her to exorcise the evil spirit that had possessed his room. Reina was responding nonsensically as he entered the room, only to discover she was asleep. He realized her response was just sleep talk. She was smiling in her dream because she had finally become a swordsman like her father. He realized that Reina was obsessed with her father. He didn't understand why she would mistake him for her dad, and wondered if his voice had changed. Reina called him from upstairs, saying she was going to train a bit in the basement. After a while, the three of them were walking through the shopping district, and Lilia showed them the gate to the labyrinth. Errol had expected a cave-like entrance, but it looked more like a house. Lilia said that maybe the gods have good taste, since there were a lot of people there with the Divinity Cup tournament coming up. They went into another gate and saw a long line to get inside. Errol wondered if some kind of special training was going on. Lilia explained that in the back, there was a teleportation magic circle that could take anyone to where they wanted to go. By using it, anyone could return to the surface. You can only go down on foot if you've never been to that floor before. Errol was surprised to hear all this. Reina had been to the 14th floor, while Lilia had made it to the 12th. Errol expressed that he wanted to go to the 14th floor, but that wasn't how the system worked. Lilia explained that magic only allows a person to travel to a place they have been to at least once. He felt embarrassed for wanting to fight someone so strong. Lilia said she would show him the shortest path. They were ready to give it their all before the Divinity Cup tournament. Lilia told Reina that she would take care of Errol and suggested Reina go to the deeper floors if she wanted, but Reina insisted on going with them. Lilia tried to avoid Reina on the way, saying there was no need for two guides. She pulled Errol along with her. Errol felt it would be more trouble if he went with just Lilia, so he suggested Reina come with them. Reina felt happy but didn't understand why she also felt relieved. Lilia announced that they had reached the underground area. They encountered living armor to train with. As soon as they arrived, the suits of armor almost immediately started attacking them. The suits of armor moved quickly despite their height, although they were no match for an A-ranker. They could even move without their heads. Reina explained that they were suits of armor animated by the dungeon's magic, so they didn't feel pain or have any weak points. Errol understood that the only way to immobilize them was to cut off their legs. In just a moment, he had done it. Everyone asked what they should do with the pieces. Reina said that they would revive after a while and attack them again. This was a good place to practice. Lilia noted they were pretty strong enemies for the first floor, but in reality, she hadn't really done anything. She said it was just her way of testing the newcomers. But the truth was, she didn't get a chance because Reina and Errol were too fast. He asked Lilia what her class was. She said she was a swordsman, and that if there were any skills he wanted to learn, she would gladly help him. However, Errol had already been trained in swordsmanship. Princess Lilia's skills were of no use to Errol. Lilia said Errol had no empathy, but they were interrupted by a voice crying for help. A heavily injured person appeared before them, saying that when they first entered the room, a trap was sprung. Reina said she would take him to the exit, but he refused because his comrades were still in that room. He wanted to go back to save them and asked for Reina's help. Lilia warned Reina not to go, wanting to strike a deal to get proper compensation for helping them. Errol said that Lilia had no right to lecture him about empathy after what she did with the undead. The boy said he had seen Lilia in a magazine, thinking it was an article about a beautiful swordswoman, but he found out it was about the fall of her guild. Lilia got angry and wanted to ignore the boy after hearing that, but he offered them all the betting money he had won the week before. That amount of money was truly valuable to Lilia, and she agreed to help. But Errol seemed suspicious, saying there was too much blood. Lilia thought that could happen if one's divine protection was severed, something she knew from her father. Reina said that not everyone was as strong as Errol and was willing to help. The boy asked them to come with him to his comrades. Lilia was delighted to get the money and told everyone to work as hard as possible. She was very happy that she would be able to eat delicious food when they got out. Errol noticed the bloody footprints and the strange wounds. He figured such blood loss would be life-threatening and the boy shouldn't be able to stand, let alone without any holy water. But Errol wondered if this was a trap. He felt excited at the possibility, as it would be more interesting than the living armor. The girls urged him to hurry up, and the boy led them to the entrance of a hidden room. But there was no door, just a normal wall. The boy told them to push on it, and a hidden door appeared. Reina wanted to rush inside, but Errol told the boy to go in first. They didn't see any comrades or enemies there, but noticed there was a lot of blood on the ground. Lilia also noticed there was a lot of money there. Reina and Errol wondered about Lilia's behavior. The moment she touched the money, some kind of magic was activated. The boy apologized to them and explained that a job is a job. It was a transportation magic that had been activated, and the entire room was teleported away. They had fallen into a vast space with no escape. Reina and Errol wondered if they had gone deeper than the 14th floor. But all Errol cared about was that the money had disappeared. The boy who led them into the trap was transported along with them. He also wondered how he got transported. Errol noticed a pillar of light there. The boy explained to Lilia that he had been ordered to lead them to the room. Errol realized that the room had a summoning circle, and anyone who entered it would not be able to get out alive. With the lowest probability, a creature in rainbow-colored armor appeared before them. It was the highest-level sword god, also known as an incarnation. Lilia said that her life would end here, but she wanted to become a handsome gentleman before she died. Suddenly, they felt something large flying toward them. They all hit the ground. Reina noticed the wounds from a sword. Errol explained that it was a skill from the sword god called Divine Piercing Blade. It was a technique that sent a flying attack toward the opponent. He said that the god would be within range anywhere in this room. Reyna didn't know how Arel knew so much about the sword god's skills, but he announced that it was getting closer and he would fight the god. And it was an intense fight, but thanks to his strength training, the reduction from the divine protection was lower than he had imagined. The god was so fast that all the attacks happened in the blink of an eye. Errol said that the Shikuchi skill was insane, but it was actually a higher skill called Divine Step. With that skill, the god could reach any corner of the room in an instant. Without a doubt, it was a true sword god. Lilia worried that Arel couldn't possibly win. But Arel had seen all the skills before, and he said this was a good way to test his abilities. The injured boy asked how he could see a situation like this as a performance test. It was an opportunity for Errol to attack, and so he did. The girls wondered if that was also Divine Step. Even just seeing the swords clash, they felt as if they were taking damage. They couldn't believe that Arel was fighting a god. Reyna wondered if there were any other deadly skills in the game, as their bodies felt heavy and they couldn't understand what was happening. Actually, the god had activated the Divine Order skill, which reduces the target's divine protection, compromising their power. To a human, they couldn't even see where Errol was. Errol recalled his training sessions with his mother. She had taught him how to counter Divine Order and how to use a skill in the situation called Infinite Breakthrough, also known as High-Speed Slash. Lilia and Reyna were watching the fight between the god and Errol. Errol was fighting so casually, which was unbelievable. Then Errol decided to use his final skill to win the match, and money began to fall from the armor. Errol activated the Infinite Breakthrough skill, a very valuable skill, because it wasn't a skill for a classless person. Arel defeated the sword god. Lilia danced with joy and said that was her husband. Reyna was shocked by what she was saying, but she approached Errol to find out how he knew the sword god's skills. Lilia wondered about that too. She had lived in this city her whole life, but had never seen the sword god. Arel explained that his mother was actually a sword god. Lilia couldn't believe it because his father didn't know about her. He said that his mother had probably changed her class before leaving the city. Reyna didn't understand why a sword princess would live in an ordinary village. He said that his mother hated standing out. Reyna then told him that if she had known he was the son of the sword god, she wouldn't have asked him for a duel. Errol was glad he had kept it a secret. The match with Reyna was very important to him. Lilia said that instead of talking about the past, they should look for a way out. A summoning circle that appeared in the cleared room was dealt with, but suddenly they noticed a similar light from where the living armors had appeared. They wondered if it was another summoning circle. Errol decided to jump into it, and Reyna followed, saying they'd be fine as long as they were with Errol. Lilia then called for the boy who had tricked them to come along. The boy introduced himself as Deal, and couldn't believe the girl was willing to help him. Lilia said that they hadn't punished him properly yet, so they were taking him with them. She thought that what the boy did had actually benefited Errol and planned to let it slide. Meanwhile, Lilia's father was drinking in a bar. He overheard some men talking about how they had tricked a small guild into a teleportation trap to make money. They said it was how Black Blade was going to win. Lilia's father approached them and asked if they would mind sharing more information. One of the men recognized that he was missing his right arm. They realized it was the former guildmaster of Dragonfang, and they grew fearful. Lilia's father screamed, asking them what they did to his daughter. The man explained that they had lured them into a trap. George walked in and asked if Rod was causing a commotion. Rod is Lilia's father. Rod said he suspected that the other man was the one who ordered the men to lure his guild into the trap. George acted as if he didn't know what Rod was talking about. Rod told him not to play dumb, saying he knew George had a tendency to set traps for people who got in his way. George called it a ridiculous accusation. He said there was no proof and that it was just a coincidence that his guild members were there when Lilia and her team entered the room. He lied, saying they had tried to stop them from going in. George told Rod to confirm it when Lilia got back, but he was thinking that they would never return alive. Rod then turned to leave, but he suddenly noticed Lilia and her team in the bar. She invited them to a party with the money they had earned. Lilia's father and George were both shocked to see them alive. He asked if they'd been tricked into a trap. Lilia said they nearly died, but managed to defeat the enemy. However, George just thought they were lying. Lilia insisted that their guild was actually very strong. George couldn't believe that B-rankers like them could defeat a sword god. Errol said that the people who lured them into the trap had confessed. George tried to feign innocence again, but Lilia shouted. She said the place was in an underground labyrinth, and it was their own fault for walking into the trap. Even though that made sense, Rod said he would never forgive George for targeting his precious daughter's life. George asked what a drunkard like him could possibly do. Rod replied that he would stop drinking. George said that wouldn't change the fact that he was an old man who had lost half his skill. George then said he would join the upcoming battle and was determined to take down Errol. Errol said he would consider it. George was frustrated that the guild had survived such a trap. But after the Sword Princess disappeared, they had crushed the dual sword master, so the title of strongest should have been George's. He couldn't believe that an unranked nobody could defeat higher-level people one after another. He wondered if his position was about to be stolen. George was determined to kill Errol. He observed a sword and thought about using it. Meanwhile, the Dragonfang Guild is discussing the upcoming battle. Reina wonders if their debts are coming due. Lilia announces that the qualifiers for the battle have been posted. She and Errol are in the same bracket. Reina explains that the winners of each bracket can advance to the real match. She says she's lucky to be in a different bracket from the two of them and is determined to pass the qualifiers this year. Errol says she should tell her father. She says her dad would be thrilled. Then she realizes he used the word papa instead of father, which makes her chances seem slim. Lilia says she won't give up. She suggests going back to the underground labyrinth. They say goodbye to Rod, but he reminds them to be careful this time. He's worried about his daughter and is determined to return as a swordsman. On the day of the Divine Sword Tournament qualifiers, Lilia risked her own victory, but is happy that Errol will be fighting the person she lost to. She says they'll use special skills, so she reminds him to be careful. Errol says he's seen most of the skills in the labyrinth. She reminds him that these skills aren't related to swordsmen, but to magic swordsmen, who fight with magic alongside their swords, forming a strange class. But his opponent says she doesn't want to be criticized by someone unranked like Errol. She says she doesn't want to hear any excuses like him losing because of her advantage. Errol confirms he won't and says the stronger one will win. She starts using her sword magic, attacking him with various moves. She tells him to dance for her until he's exhausted. She uses a flame sword, making it impossible for him to read her moves due to its overwhelming attack power. But he was able to win. Errol says it's a powerful sword, but she doesn't know how to use it properly. Her magic is what you'd call average. He says that compared to his father's magic, her flame is like a candle. He also says she's not much better than Lilia. Lilia gets angry hearing that, and with his final moves, he defeats the magic girl. He is announced as the winner of Bracket 4. He's wondering if he can learn magic. Lilia is waking up her father to go watch the final qualifiers. He's sleeping on the sofa but tells her to go by herself. She asks if he's afraid of George. Rod yells that he would never be afraid of George. She insists on convincing him, saying they have seats because they're in the same guild. He doesn't explain much, but realizes his skills have gotten rusty. He says he can't watch the sword tournament like this, but she says he doesn't understand how the people who actually made it to the final qualifiers feel. She informs her father that he's coming with her, no excuses, and drags him to the match. She asks if he was planning to sneak off and watch it later. He asks why she would think that. She explains that she knows her father loves watching the guild members grow. The Reina he's been keeping an eye on is finally participating this year. Rod gets flustered, wondering if she's praising him like her mother used to. Meanwhile, Errol notices Reina sitting alone. He asks if she's okay. Reina tells him not to startle her. He explains that she looks so nervous, he just wanted to check on her. She yells that it's a huge city event, so obviously she's going to be nervous. Errol doesn't even know who she's fighting. Errol figures she's scared of having to face him. He tells her not to get ahead of herself. Reina thanked him for waiting for her. It was time to announce the first match, and the first fighter was the Sword Emperor, George. Rod hoped that Reina wouldn't have to fight him. George's opponent was announced as the classless fighter, Errol. Reina reminded him to be careful. He assured her that he would come back. Lilia also encouraged him to defeat George. From the audience seats, Errol looked towards the entrance where George was supposed to appear, but what emerged from it shocked everyone. George looked like a monster and was holding a different sword. Rod understood what was happening. He warned Errol not to get close to George, explaining that George possessed the worst kind of weapon. George's sword contained a very powerful demonic entity within it. George, in his monstrous form, was surprised that someone like Rod still existed. Rod asked if George was someone from the royal court. But George was possessed by the demonic entity, so he couldn't recognize Rod. Back when Rod was active in the royal court, he had seen the demon sword during a maintenance check. When did the sword god destroy the demonic entity? This world is haunted by the grudges it carries. Afterwards, the sword was sealed away, and the demonic entity lived on for hundreds of years. To it, human lives were fleeting compared to a demon's. Everyone who knew about it had died, and the truth became a legend filled with fear and horror. But George had sought the power to control the might of the demon sword. The demonic entity introduced itself as Dulgelda. He was eager to enjoy his own existence after waiting for so long. Reina had learned about it in her history class. She told Errol that the demonic entity had once summoned an evil god. She wondered how a legend could possibly be real. Lilia was terrified hearing about the demon. She knew it had destroyed countless cities with its power alone. The audience panicked and decided to run for their lives. The demonic entity, however, relished their screams of panic and despair, but that still wasn't enough for him. After hundreds of years of boring waiting, he created a magic circle on the ground so that no one could leave. The audience screamed, shoved one another, and cried, begging to be let out of there. Lilia wondered how a demon could do such things. For him, massacring humans in a state of terror and pain was the best feeling in the world. But Errol pointed his blade at the demon. The demon, surprised, asked if he wasn't afraid of its magic. Errol replied that he wasn't afraid and believed he could win, because it had been defeated by the sword god before, which proved it wasn't invincible. The demon said that if Arl were the sword god, he might have a chance, but it declared that a sword god no longer existed in this world. Rod agreed with that, and Lilia tried to tell her father that Arl's mother was a sword god. Arl told the demon that a sword god does exist in this world, and that the demon couldn't defeat him. Errol began attacking the demon with his techniques, stunning the creature as he used the skills of a sword god, like Divine Step and Infinite Strike. The demon was astonished that it couldn't defend against Errol. His movements were so similar to the previous sword god, yet he claimed to be just an average, classless person. Ultimately, the demon was destroyed by him. Everyone was in shock at how Errol had managed to do it. Some wondered if his divine protection might have run out. People suspected the demon might be able to launch a counterattack. They all wanted to know who he was. The demon had another plan. He didn't want to be sealed away again. To escape, the demon needed to leave George's body and possess another human. But no one in the audience was strong enough to help him escape the situation. Then, the demon thought of a second plan. He decided to use all his remaining power to fight Errol. Lilia was relieved that both Reina and Errol were safe. Reina wondered if the tournament would even continue, seeing as the arena had been completely destroyed. But the demon had spotted someone he could use to escape. Errol heard the sound of a sword ringing out. He saved Reina from the demon, but the spot where Lilia had been standing was destroyed. Reina and Errol went to check if Lilia was all right. Lilia said that she had been saved by her father. Errol realized he should have paid more attention to the sword than to George, but it was too late. The demon had possessed the body of Rod, the old man. He ordered Lilia to stand, pointing his sword at her. Errol said that he would have to defeat the demon once again. The demon threatened him, saying that if Errol tried to attack, he would kill Lilia, his fiancée. Errol couldn't understand what the demon was talking about. The demon explained that he had inherited the memories of the body he possessed. He said that the body's daughter had called Errol her future husband, but Errol said that if necessary, he would sacrifice Lilia. Reyna interrupted, trying to stop him. Errol stated that the demon had to understand a girl's exact value to make demands, arguing that a girl must be valuable to someone else. Lilia thought that was a horrible way to put it. She apologized, saying it was just a passing thought, and she begged him not to kill her, promising to do whatever he asked. The demon replied that he wouldn't listen to a worthless girl like Lilia. Reyna said that she felt sorry for Lilia, but Errol insisted that the demon wouldn't kill Lilia. The demon told Errol not to provoke him. The demon heard what Errol said and asked if Reyna thought someone like him would hesitate to kill a girl. He said that Errol would regret this later, but the demon realized that he couldn't move. Lilia's father's voice rang out, declaring that this was his body and he wouldn't let the demon use it for its own purposes. Rod's movements started to become strange, and Lilia managed to escape in time. Errol remembered that when George was possessed, his form changed into a beast. But compared to that, Rod's skin color had barely changed. Errol realized that Rod was fiercely resisting the demon within his own body. Lilia was happy to learn that her father was actually stronger than George. The demon began to manipulate Rod, asking if he wanted the power to reclaim his former glory. But Rod rejected the temptation. He said that Errol had made him realize that even without a right arm, he could still wield a sword. Even without skill, he could still work hard to overcome his limits. Rod affirmed that even with only one arm, he could still fight in his own way. He said that he wanted to reclaim his former position, and that could only happen if he trained hard. So he refused to help the demon and moved towards Errol. Errol then easily struck down the demon, hoping that this time it would be destroyed for good. After the tournament, more and more people joined Dragonfang. Rod was teaching all the new recruits, and the guild had begun to restore its glory. Reyna and Lilia watched the training session, and Lilia noticed that all the retired members were very passionate about mentoring. Rod wasn't sure if he should be happy about that. The boy they rescued from the dungeon, Deal, also joined the guild. He said that Rod was probably happy that the guild was expanding, but Lilia said they used to have even more members. Lilia thanked Errol for showing her father the opportunities he still had. Deal asked Lilia, "Where is Sensei?" which was his respectful way of referring to the person who had saved him. Deal was grateful and decided to call Errol by that name. After seeing Errol in the tournament, many new guild members wanted to meet him in person. But after hearing that, Lilia cried out in sadness, asking why Errol would leave her all alone, especially after he had promised to marry her. The truth was, Errol had already left to return to his village. The carriage driver asked Errol if he was sure he wanted to go back, because it was strange for a winner of the Divine Sword tournament to just leave like that. But Errol said there was nothing left for him to do there now that he'd won. The driver asked what was left in his hometown for Errol to do, and Errol expressed his desire to defeat his mother. The driver remarked that it was an interesting goal since all mothers are strong in their own way. Errol said he wasn't joking. When he returned, his mother was plucking flowers to put in a large vase because she wanted something to welcome Errol with. He guessed that his mother had sensed his presence even though he tried to hide it, but she just brushed it off and welcomed him home. She said she could immediately tell that Errol had grown stronger. Errol wanted to know if his mother could tell what he was thinking. His mother said that since she was Errol's mom, she already knew. She suggested they move to the training ground deep in the mountains, so the house wouldn't be affected by their training. The people in the market were looking towards the forest to the west, where there were flashes of fire and sounds of thunder. No one could understand what was happening. Some said that they needed to report it to the city's police chief, and some thought it might be a natural disaster. Reyna was sitting in a horse-drawn carriage, and the driver asked his customer if it was okay to pass through the village, since it looked like a battle was going on. Reyna said that no one needed to worry about the flames, as it was just Errol having some fun. She said that if the driver was worried, she would get out and walk on her own. She arrived at the house a few minutes later. When the door opened, she stepped inside. where a small child asked if she could help her. Reina wanted to know if Errol lived here, but the little girl screamed that she didn't understand. Reina was pushed out of the house. Just then, Errol and his mother arrived. Errol was surprised to see Reina, while his mother seemed pleased. The little child greeted her mother, then asked Errol who that was and how his battle with their mom went. Errol replied that it was his little sister, Mila, and his mother added that she had finally lost to Errol. But Errol didn't feel very happy, as he hadn't won in the way he wanted. His mother said that he had learned a great deal about swordsmanship in the city. Errol wanted to ask about everything that had happened in the city, except for talk about swords, but he had nothing else to talk about himself. His mother wanted to know how the relationship between Errol and the girl had started. Errol said she was Reina and that they had lived together in the city. Reina countered that she was just a fellow guild member. Errol asked why she had come looking for him, and she explained that she got worried when he suddenly disappeared from the guild, leaving only a letter behind. Normally, he should have said goodbye to everyone in person. She said that many people had left the guild for plenty of reasons, like some who had lost their motivation, so she wanted to know if something had happened to him, like an illness or some symptom. He confirmed that he was perfectly fine and had left because he had seen all of their sword techniques. His mother said that if Reina was worried enough about Errol to come all this way to check on him, then she must be in love with him. Errol's sister said her mother shouldn't trust Reina so quickly. Reina clarified that she was also born here, and that she had a request for Farah, Errol's mother. Errol's mother asked if Reina wanted to know all the things Errol liked. Reina replied that she would be the one to teach Errol everything, like the soup that he loved. Reina understood why Errol was so quiet. It was because his mother was so enthusiastic and confident. She said she wanted to become a stronger swordswoman and expressed her desire to dance with her sword as beautifully as Errol. Reina had thought about how to become the best, and then realized there was only one solution. She wanted to become Errol's mother's disciple. Errol and his sister thought Reina would be rejected, since their mother wasn't very fond of teaching others. As they were talking, Reina's father, Evans, suddenly appeared. He announced that he had detected a national disaster unfolding in the western forest. He said there was thunder rumbling and fire shooting into the sky, right where Errol had been fighting his mother. Evans was surprised when he recognized Reina, and she was happy to see her father. Farah realized she was Evans's daughter and commented that she looked just like her mother. He even asked why she was at Farah's house at a time like this. Farah replied that from now on, Reina would be starting her bridal training. Her father remarked that Reina was at that age. Reina refused, saying she wanted to learn more about the sword. His sister also shouted that all she needed was a sword. But Farah was in no mood to listen. She told everyone to follow her to investigate the western forest. Errol went into his father's room and knocked. He announced that he was back, and his father welcomed him. His father said he'd heard a girl's voice outside and asked if Errol had brought a cute girlfriend home. Errol replied that Reina was more beautiful than cute. His father said he had to meet her right away, but Errol said that he had something to talk about first. He announced to his father that he had won the fight against his mother. His father congratulated him and said he knew Errol had talent, but Errol wasn't happy, because in that moment of victory, he realized he'd already achieved his goal. He'd lost his drive. Even though he tried to keep training, it just wasn't the same. So, Errol wanted to learn magic from his father to take a different path. His father was shocked to hear that Errol wanted to learn magic. His sister joked that with a look of surprise like that, their father might dislocate his jaw. That morning, Farah handed Reina an outfit she was supposed to wear for training. Reina thought it was special equipment, but it turned out to be an apron. His sister Mila said they all wear the same thing, and the three of them headed to the kitchen. Reina pointed out that it looked like they were about to cook, and Farah confirmed she was going to teach Reina Errol's favorite dish. Reina made it clear she wanted to learn sword skills, but Farah said that a knife is a type of sword too, and that Errol had also learned it that way. At that, Reina agreed. Mila wondered how Reina could be so gullible. as Farah handed Reina a vegetable to chop. Reina had no idea what to do. Mila asked if she'd never chopped a vegetable before. She replied that even though she'd never chopped vegetables, she could do it no problem. She got ready to chop the vegetable with all her might, and Mila yelled that that's not how you chop vegetables. A loud noise erupted, shocking both Arel and his father. They ran towards the kitchen and asked if everyone was okay. Farah said they were just chopping some vegetables. Errol asked if they were using a bomb to do it. Mila was furious because her cup had been shattered. Actually, Farah had met Evans in the forest. He thanked her for teaching his precious daughter swordsmanship. He explained that he had high expectations for her. After his wife passed away, he swore he would do his best to raise Reina. Farah said that Reina was certainly honest and strong. But that wasn't what Evans was trying to say. Since he was always busy with work, he couldn't teach her about household chores. Moreover, Reina grew up with just her father back in the city, so he worried she might not know anything about housework. Evan said it would be great if she could learn those skills, but Farah told him he was overthinking it. She said that in guilds, they have a communal lifestyle, so she might have learned a little something. But after that incident, she realized she would have to teach Reina from the very basics. Reina was very confident in her swordsmanship. Farah explained that to achieve the ultimate swordsmanship, one must train both body and spirit. She said that this requires using the simplest skills in everyday life. Farah also explained that Reina would live with them to learn those skills. Mila did not want Reina living with them. Their father had to repair the kitchen after the incident, and he said he was thinking of remodeling it anyway. So this was a good opportunity. Errol asked why his father didn't repair it with magic instead of by hand. Errol's father replied that his mother liked it when he smelled of sawdust. They seemed to be madly in love. He asked Errol if he wanted to see some real magic, not the kind from textbooks. Of course, Errol was eager to see it, but his father explained that humans don't typically have internal magic power and advised him to give up on the idea. My father had looked through many books and found no record of a classless person ever awakening magic. Arl said that didn't mean it was impossible. His father said that ever since Arl won the Divine Sword tournament, the potential of a classless person shouldn't be underestimated. But that might be because they were talking about swords. Swords and magic are two different things. He showed Errol a sword he used for practice. Even though he wasn't a swordsman, he could still wield a sword with enough training. One can become a skilled swordsman, but with magic, it's like not having hands to hold a sword, so you can't even practice. Errol argued that it might be difficult, but how could his father say that people don't have magical power inside them? His father explained that when he received a blessing, he was able to use magic. But Errol was still not satisfied. He said that using the ability to cast magic as proof that he had no magical power was a stretch. Errol argued that he couldn't even check if he had magical power, because he lacked the skill. His father said he had looked through many documents but found no evidence to refute it. That meant there was still a chance he might have magical power within him. But his father said he didn't see that happening, because if Errol had magical power, he would have surely been able to use magic a long time ago. His father explained that the amount of magical power a person can hold is minuscule, and without the goddess's blessing, they can't awaken it. But Errol still believed he had a chance. His father was surprised that he could come to such a conclusion, and Errol explained that there was an incident that made him think so. He couldn't judge it for himself and wanted his father to help him since he had magic skills. His father began to recount the story. Errol was getting beaten by Reina every day, and his father thought it was because she was just rough at first. But Errol clarified that it was just a process for him to learn the steadfast skill. He spent his days learning the skill, but one day, Lilia asked him to stop because the cost of holy water had skyrocketed. Arl tried to protest, saying he was the one bringing in more of the budget. But Lilia told him he had to cut back on his use of the guild's funds and suggested he use the potions that were in the warehouse. She told him to try using those to recover. Reina asked what their effects were, or since when they had been in the room, and she worried they might contain alcohol. But Lilia said they might be delicious and could also be good practice for the steadfast skill. Errol tried them and felt a little better. He investigated what those potions actually were and discovered they were actually magical power recovery potions. His father was very excited to learn about this. To see if it was a coincidence, he kept drinking them each time. He felt himself recovering from the inside. And at that moment, Errol started to think that maybe humans really do possess a little bit of magical power. His father was also very excited because they might have a real chance at this, and he too had failed in a similar way when trying potions. He asked Errol if he could feel it without drinking a potion. Errol could move it inside his body. When Errol said he could do it, his father asked him to try bringing it out. He told Errol to imagine bringing it out to a single point in his hand. When Errol tried, something happened. His father clarified that it was, without a doubt, magical power. He said that Errol had become the best son and could now even use magic. But Errol suddenly fell out of his chair. His father said it looked like he had used up all his magical power. He said he would bring some recovery potions. Errol said he just felt a little dizzy. His father said they couldn't detect their own magic because the amount of power was too small. He also said that Errol might have the potential to be #1 in the city for this sort of thing. But with the amount of magic he had, it was still questionable whether he could become a mage. He also said that what happened earlier wasn't magic, but simply Errol bringing out his magical power. To be able to use magic, Errol needs to increase the amount of magic he has. Errol asked how he could increase his amount of magical power. His father said that it's like sword training. By tempering your body, you can increase your magical power by using it continuously. Errol asked if he had to start training all over again. His father replied that he could, and that it was about time for a drink. Errol said that it felt amazing to defeat himself. Errol went to a shop to buy some mana recovery potions. The apothecary asked if he was buying them for his father, but Errol clarified that he would be using them himself. However, the old woman at the shop told him she would always be his ally. She said that since she'd known Errol for a long time and knew he was a good kid, she'd give him 1 or 2 bottles for free. But Errol said he wanted to pay in full, so he offered to buy her entire stock. The old woman replied that she couldn't let Errol pay with money he'd stolen, because that would make his parents sad. Errol tried to explain that it was money he had earned, but the old woman didn't believe him. She said it must be difficult for him being classless, and that she still couldn't believe the gods had decided to make him one. She also insisted that Errol was still capable of earning money. Errol didn't know how to convince the old woman. When he returned home, his father asked him why he took so long. Errol replied that it took quite a while to explain things to the old woman. After that, they moved to the training area. They had been training for half a year. That day, Errol's father said that he had achieved the strength of a mage after receiving a blessing. It was time to drink the potion. Errol felt like he was still at the starting line after half a year of training. He asked his father if this meant he would be able to use magic, but his father said there was still a troublesome problem to solve. It wasn't enough just to have the power. Errol still needed to receive a piece of paper from his father. To use magic, a formula was required, using the letters written on the paper as its basic components. Errol was confused, wondering if there was some kind of pattern. Things like magical teleportation gates all came from a formula that could be activated under certain conditions. Errol said that mages have it tough, but his father said they have the skills for it. They usually create the formulas in their minds. The magic formula is automatically written in their heads, which is very useful, but Errol didn't have any skills. That's why he needed to build the formula in his head by himself every single time. It really felt like a hassle to Errol. His father said he'd get used to it if he practiced enough. He was about to start with the simple stuff. But out of nowhere, Reina appeared. She was looking for Leon and his son. Errol's father, Leon Dono, asked how he could help her. She said that Farah had sent her to announce that lunch was ready. As soon as he heard that, he said it was time to head back. Errol wanted to stop him, but Leon just wondered what Farah had cooked. Reina said that Errol's parents were really close, and she seemed to admire them a lot. She wondered what it would have been like if her own mother were still alive. After dinner, Mila thanked her mother for the delicious meal, but her mother said that Reina had made the soup, though she had added the finishing touches. When Mila found this out, she said the vegetables in the soup were too tough, but she ate it all anyway. Arl said that Mila was still little, so she preferred softer things, but for him, the soup was perfect. Reina then shouted that she came here to become a better swordswoman, and she wondered why she was only doing housework. Farah said that the better she got at housework, the more refined her swordsmanship would become. Reina asked why that was. Farah explained that with less housework for her to worry about, she would have more time to teach Reina. Reina was determined to do her best. Hearing that, Farah gave Reina a warm hug. Leon said that Farah must be very happy. Farah replied that it felt like having another daughter. Reina then asked about Errol's older sister, since she hadn't met her and was curious about what she was doing. After Errol was declared classless, his sister left home to create an environment where even a classless person like him could live comfortably. Reina couldn't understand the reason behind it. Errol could hear a voice from deep inside him. Farah asked Reina if she'd like a little practice after she finished the dishes. Reina was excited to hear that. Errol said there were many things he could teach her, but his mother was spoiling Reina too much. It seemed his mother really liked Reina. Leon also said that he liked her because Reina was an admirable and beautiful girl. Farah asked Leon which one he would choose, and he replied that he would always choose his wife, Farah. He said that Farah looked as young as ever, just like she did in her 20s. They complimented each other like a pair of teenagers. Reina said she didn't think her parents would have been a couple like that, even if her mother were still alive. A few days had passed, and Errol was heading toward the city of mages. He asked the driver how far it was to the city, and the driver replied that it would take 2 to 3 days, depending on the weather. It looked like it was about to rain. The weather was gloomy. There was another boy on the carriage, and he asked if Errol was also headed to the city of magic. When Errol said yes, the boy asked why it took him so long. He also mentioned that Errol looked a bit old to be starting out now. A girl in the carriage told him to stop. She said Errol had probably failed the entrance exam a few times and told the boy he couldn't make fun of Errol for that. Even though the girl was trying to be kind, it was actually very cruel. The boy's name was Kaido and the girl's was Kufa. Kaido started arguing with Kufa, saying she was the one looking down on Errol even more. An argument began to break out. Another girl asked them to stop. Errol realized these 3 kids were part of a group. This reminded him of the time he received his blessing. Most people in the City of Swords were already strong because they were much more experienced veterans. But he wondered if the City of Magic would be any different. Kaido then asked Errol what kind of magic he was good at. He mentioned that for him, it was red magic. His father had taught him that there were 6 types of magic, including black magic, white magic, green magic, blue magic, and red magic, each able to control different things. Black magic is for controlling or influencing darkness and death. White magic controls light or life force. Yellow magic is for earth or metal. Green magic controls air. Blue magic controls anything related to cold temperatures, while red magic controls fire and heat. The types of skills could differ from person to person, but since Errol wasn't bound to any one type, they had tested all the skills he knew. Errol replied to Kaido that he didn't have any specialty because he was classless. The girl, Kufa, said that Errol was just messing with Kaido. Errol wondered if most young people aim to study to become mages. Kaido said that lying wasn't funny. Errol insisted he wasn't lying and told them to look at his report. The kids were shocked to find out that Errol really was classless. What was wrong with him that made him pursue magic? Errol wondered if that had happened to him before. Suddenly, they heard a strange voice, like the sound of a horse, as the carriage came to a stop. Errol said it was the voice of a goblin lord and that it seemed to be coming to attack the group. The kids were scared and told the driver that they needed to hurry. But the horse had been stunned by the goblin lord's roar, so there was no way to escape. Colette, a little girl in the group, screamed, but Kufa said that even if it was a lord, a goblin lord was still just a goblin. She said that the Goblin Lord's movements were slow and its body was huge, so its attacks could be easily dodged. They got ready to use their skills to defeat the Goblin Lord. But when the Goblin Lord's head appeared, even Kufa screamed because it was a giant Goblin Lord. Everyone thought this wasn't something that newbies like them could defeat. All they could do was scream. But Errol said that if he used up all his magic, he could incinerate the Goblin Lord. He created a fireball from his magic and told the Goblin Lord to eat it. The fireball hit the Goblin Lord but didn't seem to do any damage at first. But then an explosion occurred, and the Goblin Lord was burned to ashes. Errol was shocked by what happened, thinking that he might have overdone it. Kaido couldn't believe what Errol had done. They discussed how the explosion was the ultimate spell of red magic. It was a spell that only someone with the Magic King class could use. The horse had recovered, thanks to its own magical power, leaving everyone, including the driver, in shock. Kaido came forward and apologized profusely, saying he had no idea Errol was so skilled in magic. He begged for forgiveness for making fun of him. Arl said it was fine and told Kaido not to worry about it. Kaido wanted to call Arl his master, saying he also wanted to become a mage like him. Arl humbly replied that he wasn't that great. The driver announced that the horse was back on its feet so they could get going. Arl thought to himself that if he'd known this would happen, he could have just used his sword skills. The kids murmured that there might have been a mistake on the report, or that Errol could be hiding his true talents for some reason. At Errol's home, Farah was having tea with Reina. She complimented Reina on how good she had become at making tea. Suddenly, Mila interrupted with a scream. She said that she'd gone to wake Errol up and found a letter, announcing that he had left for the City of Magic. Mila was sobbing, and her mother hugged her to comfort her. She said that Errol had talked about being interested in the city, but they never thought he would leave so suddenly. Reina wondered if her father had felt the same way when she left. She remembered leaving quite early herself, and figured that the ones who stayed behind must have felt lonely. Farah then told Reina not to leave them. Reina affirmed that she wouldn't go, since there was still so much to learn. Mila wasn't too happy about that. Arl had arrived in the City of Magic, and Kaido was showing him around. Arl remarked that the city looked really interesting. Kaido announced that the bridge they were walking on was suspended by magic. The two girls were surprised, while Kaido acted like an eager puppy. They thought it was due to some magic and decided to keep their distance. Errol felt like the two girls were having a huge misunderstanding. Kaido asked Master Errol if he was going to take the entrance exam at the Red Magic Academy, and he led Errol to the reception center. Errol noticed the academy was divided by different types of magic. The magical characters, enchantments, and many other things were different for each type of magic. Kufa was heading toward the blue section, while Colette was going toward the green one. Kaido was feeling overly anxious about the exam. He said that if someone failed the entrance exam, they would be sent back. Errol thought it was great that he didn't have to pay up front. Errol first went with Kaido to the Red Academy. They were told to get in line. The receptionist said that he was listed as classless and asked if that was a mistake. Errol confirmed it was true and wondered if he would be turned away for it, but the receptionist said it wasn't a problem. They gave Errol an admission number and told him to wait until he was called. Regardless of whether you have a class or not, everyone has the right to take the exam. Errol was glad this wasn't as strict as it was in the city of people with classes. Kaido pointed Errol toward the exam, saying that if they could hit a target from a far enough distance, they would pass. He had learned this from a mage in town, and Kaido had passed with a fireball. Then a boy appeared and said that no one had any creativity. The examiner was also surprised to see he was a high-rank mage. Errol asked Kaido if that was a big deal. Kaido said that receiving a high rank right after your blessing means you're a genius, which can put you on the elite path. But Errol remembered his father, who also had a high rank after his blessing. He wondered if it was possible to just end up as an old man in the countryside. The high-rank mage asked the examiner if he could melt the armor with his magic. The examiner said he had no objections. Kaido told Errol that the boy was probably just an arrogant jerk and he didn't like it, but in Errol's opinion, Kaido was one to talk. The boy used a spell called Incinerate, and the pillar burst into flames. Everyone wondered if he was an examiner, too. He could see that even if their skills were better than he expected, his master was still stronger. The boy couldn't accept that Kaido was comparing him to someone. Errol told him to stop showing off. The boy claimed that incinerating armor like that was impossible for a normal mage, but Errol just told him to turn around. The armor was back in its place, completely unmelted. The boy said he never thought it could withstand his attack. It was an old suit of mithril armor they had at the school, which was one of the hardest materials to find. Kaido started showing off again, saying his master could definitely melt it. The boy demanded Arel show off the skills he had since he was talking so big. Arel clarified that he hadn't said anything, but Kaido insisted that Arel could do it. Errol used his magic on mithril for the first time. This was a good opportunity for him, and he used an explosion spell. The pillar of the attack was so small they only saw it for a split second. The boy scoffed at this, saying he enjoyed it like a circus performance. But then he realized that the armor was melting. He couldn't believe that mithril could actually melt. He said that an explosion spell can't melt mithril, and suggested Errol must have cheated somehow. Arel explained that it wasn't a true explosion spell. He had modified it by compressing the flame's range and its activation time. The boy was completely shocked by this, while Kaido got excited and started praising Arel all over again. Arel then moved on to the other exam centers. He went to the Blue Exam Center, where Kufa was also present. She had passed the exam and was overjoyed. Errol destroyed the mithril armor with his Ice Age magic. Everyone was also very surprised by that. Next, Errol went to the Green Exam Center. There, he met Colette, who was crying in a corner. He wondered if she had failed the exam. She said her legs froze up because she was so nervous, she couldn't even make it to the reception desk. She said she's the type of person who becomes useless whenever she gets too nervous. She asked Errol how he deals with it. Errol said he doesn't feel nervous at all and asked Colette why she was worried. She said she was afraid she might not pass the exam, and that fear was the main reason. Errol asked if she was someone who was afraid of failure, thinking they had never failed in their lives. But she replied that she was the complete opposite. She failed often, and that's why she didn't want to face it again. Errol didn't understand. If she always failed, then why be afraid? He explained that her life wouldn't end just because she failed. He said that even if she failed the exam, she would still have other chances in life. She was encouraged by his words and said she would do her best. After a while, Errol shattered the armor there, and everyone was shocked as the fragments flew out. He was surprised to see that the armor wasn't made of mithril. After that, he ran to the other exam centers and completed the test for the yellow and white armors. Now, only the black exam center was left. The place was like a deserted mansion. He wondered if some stray beast lived here. As he approached, the girl asked if he'd seen Gu-chan. She said that the moment she looked away, it vanished. Arel warned her not to get close to a certain box, from which he heard some sounds. The girl moved towards it and found her pet. She cuddled it like a child, which Errol found strange. It was a chimera she had created. Suddenly, a skull welcomed them to the academy. Errol thought it was a monster and sliced its head off, but the head reattached itself and asked why he would decapitate such a beautiful young lady. Errol wondered if it was an undead monster, but she said her name was Ratalia, with a dream of becoming a beautiful office worker. However, no matter how Errol looked at her, she was still just a skeleton. Errol asked if Ratalia could take him to the exam, but she told him the Black Academy didn't have one. Almost no kids want to learn black magic, so they welcome everyone. Errol wondered if this was a good idea, remembering the strange girl he had met. Kaido ran up to him after a while, saying he was looking for Arel. He asked why Arel was in such a hurry. He went on to ask if Arel would choose the Red Academy. Kufa and Colette were there as well. They also asked him to join their respective academies. Errol couldn't understand what they were all talking about. Kaido said they already knew Arel had been accepted into 3 academies. They asked which one he was going to join. He said he would join all of them. Kaito shouted that it was impossible to join 3 academies. Errol clarified that he'd been accepted into 6 academies, not 3, and he planned to join all 6. Errol presented his identification card for each academy. The 3 of them were shocked to learn that Errol had gotten into all the academies. Kufa asked if anyone had said anything. Errol said it seemed the academies didn't share student information with each other, since he already had his ID cards. He thought there wouldn't be any problems, but the classes were held at the same time, so attending 6 academies at once would be an issue. However, he noticed that the attendance score only accounted for about 20%, while exams made up the bulk of the grade. It seemed possible to pass this way, but Colette said that he wouldn't be able to pass the classes without attending the lectures. She also said that recent information wasn't updated in the textbooks, so he needed to take notes from the classes. After thinking for a moment, Arl came up with an idea. He asked if he could borrow their notes. Kaito and Colette were willing to help, but Kufa didn't seem to like the idea. Errol said the Black Academy had no classes or curriculum. He was told they had to study on their own. Errol said he would take care of the Yellow and White Academies and was confident that everything would be fine. Kaito suggested he attend the first class of the Red Academy. Kufa wondered how he could possibly manage 6 academies when handling just one was already quite difficult. Kaito and Errol then went to their first class. As usual, Kaito asked his teacher where he should sit. Errol said that he preferred to sit in the back. The boy from the examination center recognized Arl and tried to call out to him, but they ignored him. He yelled that they couldn't just ignore him like that. Kaito said that he was the loser from the entrance exam. The boy got angry and said he didn't remember losing to Kaito. The boy said it must have been some kind of misunderstanding, since a mage can't lose to another mage. Errol said that he wasn't a mage. The boy said that given his age, it wouldn't be strange if Errol was a mage too. But Errol confirmed that he wasn't a mage either. The boy wondered if Errol was a magic king, but Errol said he wasn't that either. The boy couldn't understand what Errol was saying, but they were interrupted by the teacher, who announced that the lecture was about to begin. The teacher asked the boy for his name. He introduced himself as Royce and pointed at Errol to inform the teacher that Errol was the one who used explosion magic in the entrance exam. Royce wanted to know Errol's class. The teacher looked at the records and said that there were only 2 people who used eruption magic from then on. He noted Errol's name and said that Errol had no class. Surprised, they couldn't believe Errol was classless. Errol told Kaito that he'd eventually get used to it. There were many magic characters that they had to learn. Errol found it difficult to understand the vocabulary and the formulas. He was sure they weren't starting from the beginning. Magic characters appeared above their heads. Those who received the mage class due to a blessing did so because of the skills they possessed. The teacher said they would learn all the characters, as there might be someone who didn't remember any magic characters or incantations. He said that a person could use magic if they understood the formula, or a person could use skills without knowing them. The teacher went on to say that most spells display the proper effect, emitting an acceptable level of magic power so that the mage's body isn't overloaded. But if they could mix and change the formulas, they could create standard skills that yielded special results, which was an advanced level. Kaito understood that what his master did was advanced. He remembered how his father turned formulas into daily riddles for fun. Errol was then taken to the Green Academy, where a practical lesson was about to take place. He felt happy that the Green Academy was finally getting interesting, since no academy before it had been. Errol met Colette there and said this was his first time trying flight magic. Colette was surprised that Errol could use high-level magic. Arl's father was afraid of heights, so they couldn't fly home, which meant circumstances never allowed him to experience flying. The teacher asked them to separate as they were going to practice flight magic. The teacher instructed them to imagine they were flying like a bird by spreading their arms. That method was based on a skill, but no matter how hard Errol imagined, he couldn't think of a formula. Errol tried to figure out which formula he should use. Colette tried to fly and managed to do it for a second or two, but then had a rough landing. Everyone started teasing her, but she said she wouldn't let failure defeat her anymore. Errol was confident that with a little practice, she would be able to fly perfectly. But he needed to practice himself first. Errol wondered if he could create a formula to fly up from his feet. But his formula was wrong, and he fell down hard. A boy appeared and said that everyone was terrible at flying, in a mocking tone. He said he would teach everyone how to do it, and started flying like a bird. Everyone was amazed. The boy said he had been practicing flight magic since he became a mage so he wouldn't lose in the races. Colette explained that races were held regularly at the Green Academy. In these races, participants would fly up into the air and down along a route to see who was the fastest. The teacher said that comparing themselves to others wouldn't help them improve and asked everyone to support each other until they could all fly correctly. Errol was determined to join the race. The boy with the flying skill mocked Errol and asked how he could participate when he couldn't even fly. Errol said that he would practice enough to learn it. Kaido asked the teacher when the next race would be. She said it was in 2 months. The flying boy said that being able to levitate is an easy task, but mastering the skill would take half a year. He advised Ariel to come back next year. Arel realized that if he could combine wind with a similar formula, he'd be able to fly. Colette asked if Arel was going to enter the race next year, but Ariel said he would join the upcoming competition. Kaito was thrilled and said he knew it. The 3 of them stayed behind at the academy that night. Kaito didn't understand why they had come back so late. Colette said she was too scared to go back to the building by herself to get something she'd forgotten. Kaito understood that it was much easier to get lost after dark, but the 2 girls should have been fine on their own. Kaito asked why they had brought him along, to which Kufa replied that Kaito himself had said they should stick together. The more the better, because of the rumors going around. Kaito had no idea what rumor she was talking about. Kufa said it was something that practically everyone heard every day. Kaito was terrified and didn't want to hear another word. Kufa reminded him how he used to be afraid of going to the bathroom alone at night when they were kids. Kaito got angry at Kufa for bringing up the past. He pointed out that Kufa was hiding behind Colette too. The 2 of them started bickering, and Colette tried to stop them. She said that if they kept yelling like that, the thing might find them. They all screamed when they saw a dark figure approaching. The figure realized there were 3 of them. It grabbed Colette and covered her mouth. Kaito yelled that if the figure didn't let Colette go, he would burn it to a crisp. But Colette told everyone to calm down, as she recognized the figure's voice. Everyone was shocked to find out it was Errol. They asked why he was there at this hour. But Arel wanted to know what the 3 of them were doing there at night, too. Errol then told them to look at his feet. He was actually floating in midair. Errol said that he was practicing for the race. They realized the rumor going around was actually about Errol. They asked Arel if practicing every night would take a toll on his body. Arel replied that nearly dying during training was perfectly normal. He explained that he gets plenty of sleep and that their voices had woken him up. They didn't understand how he could use flight magic in his sleep. Arel said he could practice even in his sleep, like killing 2 birds with 1 stone. Kufa, however, didn't think that really counted as sleeping. She said she wanted to punch a ghost. Kaito admitted he thought he'd get stronger by coming to the academy, but now he wondered if he'd been wrong. He said he'd never be able to reach Arel's level, but decided he would start his own training to become exceptional, at least with the magic he could master. Arel encouraged Kaito to use his magic without being afraid of ghosts. Kufa wondered how Arel could train so hard. She used to think he was just a genius. Colette said that those skills were the result of a lot of effort. Kufa also announced she would start her own training, insisting she wasn't copying Kaito. Colette was ready to do it too. Everyone said their good nights and went on their way. After the incident, Arel was wide awake, so he went to the office of Ratalia, the living corpse. He said he'd come to ask for permission to use the library. She asked for the titles of the books he wanted to borrow, but Errol didn't know them. He said that he had been busy reading all the books that he didn't have at home, because those books were full of interesting information and Errol needed a change of pace. Ratalia said that most children can't read books on dark magic because it makes them feel ill. She knew Errol had an incredible ability to absorb information. One day, Their teacher was teaching them some formulas. Aurel asked to speak and pointed out that the third line of the formula was wrong. The teacher agreed and corrected it. Kaido was surprised that their teacher had acknowledged it. Errol explained that since he couldn't come up with the formulas in his head, he had to memorize them one by one. Kaido wondered how Errol could memorize such long formulas. Errol said there was a kind of shorthand that helped him remember more. He also said he could remember the formula on the blackboard even if 30% of it were erased. The teacher found this interesting and asked Errol to write the formula on the board. Errol had shortened the 10-line formula down to just 6 lines. The teacher was also shocked when Errol said he could activate it with just those lines. He decided to trust Errol, but he also said that it wasn't completely safe. If Errol failed, there would be an explosion. However, Errol was confident that as long as he didn't die, he could do it. The teacher wondered how he could understand the formula so well. All the students were in shock. The teacher asked Errol if he wanted to take the promotion exam. Errol was surprised, but Royce was even more so. He wanted to take that exam too. Kufa and Kato were discussing Errol's promotion exam. Kufa wasn't surprised, as she had already predicted this would happen. She said that the academy had already explained to them how they could skip a grade, but they were still shocked to realize that only a month had passed in a 2-year course. Kaito then remembered someone named Royce. He wasn't happy that Royce had used his master. Errol decided to give it a try, saying that there's nothing wrong with seizing an opportunity if it presents itself. He figured he could respect people who hated to fail. Colette wondered what the promotion exam was. Kaido thought that Arl really liked Royce and felt jealous. Colette wanted to know the details of the exam since she would be taking it in 2 years. On the day of the promotion exam for Royce and Arl, the teacher led them to the testing site. There was a straight corridor with iron bars at the end. The teacher explained that behind the gate were the magical monsters prepared for the exam. He said that the candidates would enter the corridor, and after the cage was opened, the monsters would charge at them. The candidate had to defeat it before it got close. If they succeeded, they would pass. But if the monster got too close, they could be attacked. So the teacher advised them to be careful and asked who would go first. Royce wanted to go, and Errol, not caring either way, stepped into the corridor. The teacher asked if he was ready and said he would open the gate when Royce was ready. Inside was a minotaur. Royce used a flamethrower spell, but he missed his target. Errol remarked that Royce's fire magic was stronger than what he had summoned during the entrance exam. The teacher was pleased to see that the classes were paying off. But the pressure from the approaching monster was making Royce more and more tense. The flamethrower spell could only be used against a stationary target, not a moving one, so Royce couldn't hit the monster. Just as the Minotaur was about to attack him, it vanished. The teacher explained that they had protective measures in place to keep them safe. Royce knew he couldn't hit the monster, so the teacher told him he should have known what the result would be. The teacher said this was a test for students after 2 years to assess the progress they've made. Royce asked that if the teacher knew he couldn't hit the monster, then why did he let him participate? The teacher explained that in 2 years, the others in his class would be able to defeat the monster. Royce was happy, thinking he would become better after 2 years. He realized he was just a weak mage, but he declared that he wouldn't give up and wouldn't let down his teacher's expectations. Now it was Errol's turn. The teacher asked him to get ready to step into the corridor and open the gate. The teacher also said that Errol would be doing the same thing as before, but Errol wondered if it was the same species, because this monster looked much larger and darker. Suddenly, one of the teacher's students rushed over and announced that she might have mistaken a high-rank minotaur for the one used for the exam. She begged the teacher to cancel the exam, but panicked when she saw the monster charging towards Errol. Errol used a fire shot spell, with 2 spears of flame erupting from his hands. The girl was surprised that he could use 2 spears at once. The teacher said that these spears were weaker than a fire spray, but it was easier to hit the target. Once a spear strikes the monster's leg, it'll be immobilized, but since it was a high-rank monster, it predicted the fire's trajectory and dodged. The teacher said they had set up a barrier to prevent any attacks on the candidates, but he was worried that the shield could be damaged by the monster. The teacher told Errol to fall back, but Errol said he could handle it. He was confident he could defeat the monster. The teacher stressed that it would dodge any spell sent its way. The girl then noticed that 2 fire spears had been shot from above, striking the monster's legs. The teacher couldn't tell if it was for real or just a coincidence. He asked if Errol had used a homing effect. Errol said that he had aimed for the monster's back. He used the fire spray spell, since the monster had become stationary after its legs were hit. The monster was annihilated by the sheer power. Even the most brilliant students struggled against a high-rank minotaur. The teacher knew Errol's skill level wasn't that of a new student. He couldn't believe Errol was classless. He thought Errol might be of a much higher rank. The teacher congratulated Errol for passing the exam. Kaido was recounting the incident to the girls. Kufa asked why he was bragging about it. Kaido said that students are always happy about their master's success. Colette noticed Errol was still deep in thought and asked if anything was wrong. Errol said that the promotion exam was an exception, as it's usually held only once a year at the end of the term. Kufa said that if the teacher agreed, it could be held ahead of schedule. Errol replied that the teacher was the one who suggested it. Just then, Kufa asked if Errol was planning to take the exam at the Blue Academy. She shouted. Errol said that he planned to take it at all the academies, not just the Blue Academy. Kaito and Colette were so excited they jumped for joy, but Kufa looked shocked. She said that was absurd, and that if Errol did anything normal from now on, she wouldn't believe it. Errol had informed the teacher at the Blue Academy of his wish to take the promotion exam, but she refused, saying that the promotion exam is held once a year, but Errol insisted that if the teacher agreed, it could happen. She replied that was only for truly exceptional students. Errol asked the teacher to assess his blue rank magic, but she said she would consider it after a few more lessons. Errol felt frustrated and said that was just a waste of time. He stated that he wanted to advance without spending too much time in classes. Those unwise words made the teacher furious. She asked if Errol was calling her classes useless. Errol said he didn't mean to speak ill of them, but just that they weren't a match for his level. Kufa said that while Errol was good at magic, he really had a sharp tongue. The teacher said she would assess Errol's skills herself to see if he was worthy of taking the promotion exam. Errol wanted to ask why she couldn't see it immediately, but before he could finish, Kufa stopped him and apologized to the teacher. The teacher and Errol moved to a small practice area. Kufa knew Errol was strong, but since he had angered teacher Hegel, she couldn't imagine what the outcome would be. The teacher was another candidate for the Magic King class. She began to lay out the rules of the battle, stating that no physical attacks were allowed, and the winner would be the first to break their opponent's aura guard. Errol asked if he won, would she allow him to take the promotion exam? Professor Hegel couldn't believe what he was saying, asking if he was implying he could actually beat her. Errol replied that he would never know unless he tried. He seemed much more confident than she had thought. She said that if he was that confident, then they'd do it. Hegel unleashed an ice storm spell on Errol. Kufa watched from the viewing gallery, her limbs aching from the intense cold. The world was instantly frozen over. It seemed Errol didn't have time to react and was trapped in a pillar of ice. The teacher started lecturing him, saying that in a battle like this, you have to unleash your strongest magic at just the right moment. She told him it would be best if he remembered that. The sound of cracking ice stunned her. She couldn't understand what was happening, and couldn't believe that Errol had used an ice defense spell. She wondered how he had prepared the spell in advance and activated it at that very moment to block her attack. She was pleased because Errol was genuinely skilled at creating formulas. Now it was Errol's turn, and he used Ice Blade magic. She asked if he thought he could beat her with something like that, because it was a rather basic skill for her. She easily blocked all of the ice blades. Errol understood that she was a skilled teacher. It reminded him that he had also used ice blades during the entrance exam. She asked if it was his specialty. She also said that even if he just kept increasing the number of ice shards, it wouldn't be enough to defeat her. He said he would test that theory and started to double the number, but it wasn't enough to beat her. Errol then created 100 ice blades to her left, 100 more to her right, and another 100 from behind. She was shocked to see him create ice blades from all directions. Increasing the number of blades was easy, but changing their point of origin required a complex formula. She knew she wouldn't be able to block all these blades with just ice edge, so she used the ice shield spell. Even though the number of ice shards increased, the effect was as solid as ever. Professor Hagel said that it was still a basic level spell and he couldn't break her ice shield. She decided to use these ice blades for her own shield to conserve energy. This way, she could defeat him with a single simple blow, since he was using so much magical power and would surely run into energy problems. She planned to switch to an offensive mode. He stopped his attack, guessing that it was time to end the game. She asked how he was going to try and break her shield, but he said he would make it, so she couldn't take down her own shield. He used the Ice Lance spell, shocking her that after creating all those ice blades, he could still use another spell. Ice Lance is a highly destructive spell. She tried her best to dodge, but was trapped by her own shield. She was about to lose to a student and screamed, while Errol won the match and earned his promotion. Having succeeded in getting promoted at the Green Academy, he wondered where he should go next. Kufa had to retreat due to the cold from the battle. Kaito said he really wanted to see that match, and Colette was also eager to hear more about it. Afterward, Errol went to the Green Academy's office to request a promotion, but the girl at the reception desk said it would be impossible. If he didn't have a valid reason, she would have to check for precedents and review the conditions. She discovered that the newcomer had outstanding achievements in all subjects, so the board of directors had always favored him. The woman asked if he intended to request a meeting with the board, but the board was extremely busy, so she couldn't let him disturb them. She said that if he violated the conditions, he would be forced to leave the academy and had only one option: wait for the final exam. The woman asked if he was planning to participate in the flying race, as that was a way to meet the board of directors. He would be present at the event and would personally congratulate the winner. Errol had a chance if he could win the race. The woman said that the conditions for winning seemed difficult for him to achieve. Errol planned that if he won the race, he would take a huge step forward. He thanked her for her help and said he would do it. She wondered if he was the boy who couldn't fly before. Just like that, the day of the race arrived. A huge crowd gathered to watch the flying race. Errol had invited Colette to join him, but she refused, saying he couldn't do well. Kaito, on the other hand, was cheering for his master. A student expressed curiosity about the race as it was just beginning, while the commentator began their narration. A participant named Marco crashed straight into the spectator stands. Exactly the same mistake he made last year. It seems he still hasn't mastered his abilities. In just the first minute, the lead group began to break away. The lead group consisted of about 15 people, and the commentator noticed many new faces. The two in the lead were first-year students, Skyke and Errol. Skyke asked Errol how he was maintaining such a speed, since Errol wasn't known for being fast. Errol explained that the race is a long one, and if someone goes all out from the start, they'll easily fall behind in the second half. The lead group was approaching the main gate, which is the first checkpoint in the race. After passing through the gate, they had to face a sharp turn to stay on the course. The headmaster commented that if they took the outside lane, they would surely fall behind. But if they were used to this corner, the centrifugal force could push them off the track. Skill is a crucial factor, but their position within the group is just as important. Skyke was determined to hold his position, as being in the middle of the pack had its advantages. Once past the gate, he planned to maintain his speed and execute a sharp turn. The whole group passed through the curve without slowing down, while the commentator excitedly narrated the events. However, a few people crashed into the wall. Just like every year, the participants who made it through the gate headed towards the next town. The headmaster and the commentator prepared to greet the lead group as they entered the town. The commentator announced that the goddess statue would be the turning point. The participant nicknamed the goddess of the air, Dion, was in the lead. She was the winner of all 3 previous races, and this year, The headmaster wondered if she would once again overcome her rivals to claim another victory. Skyke was determined not to let Dion beat him. Only Arel and Skyke were able to keep up with Dion's pace. Kaido wondered if his master was among the top 3 leaders. Dion was surprised to see 2 rookies able to keep up with her. Skyke told her that he would be the one to win this race. Dione wondered how long he could keep up, then accelerated even faster, leaving the 2 rookies behind. The commentator wondered if Dion hadn't been serious before. Skyke said that he hadn't shown his full potential yet, and if he got serious, he could catch up to her. He screamed that he couldn't lose, but was left behind. The commentator remarked that Skyke deserved praise for getting this far. Despite being a newcomer, he showed promise for future races, but one person still remained in the race, Arel. She decided to accelerate even more. But Arel had only been practicing flight magic for 2 months, so he couldn't speed up anymore. At this rate, he wouldn't be able to keep up with her. He thought that it was time to resort to his last measure. The commentator didn't understand what had just happened. Arel had suddenly accelerated unexpectedly, as if there was some kind of movement right before his burst of speed. The headmaster remarked that Arel was kicking the air. He had created a cloud of gas and was using it as a foothold, constantly accelerating by kicking off of it. The commentator wondered if kicking the air was even possible, and the headmaster was also surprised. They concluded that Arel's potential for further acceleration seemed limitless. The headmaster said that this skill usually belongs only to the highest level swordsmen. Arel wondered if the headmaster had realized something, because this was indeed the flying technique of a gifted swordsman. In the final stretch, the academy came into view, and the contestants gave it their all, looking like it would be a photo finish. The headmaster expressed concern, reminding everyone that this was the same stretch of road as before the turning point, and there was a circle in front of the gate. At the speed they were flying, he warned that they wouldn't be able to take the corner without risking a crash. Dione saw the curve and decided to slow down to avoid the danger, but Arel thought that whoever slowed down first would be the loser. However, if they went too far without slowing down, they would fly off the track. Seeing that Arel wasn't slowing down at all, Dione finally had to give in and decelerate first, allowing Arel to take the lead. Although taking the corner at such a high speed was incredibly dangerous, Arel still managed to get through it. It looked like he had poured all of his strength into his arms to steer himself through the challenging curve. The commentator wondered if this was a situation like the last time Arel had kicked the air. The principal remarked that Arel's arm strength must be on another level. Now, all Arel had to do was return to the starting point and pass through the gate. As a result, Arel took first place, and the commentator announced that this year, a rookie had won. Kufa, Colette, and Kaido were overjoyed. Dione was surprised, not expecting to lose like that, but she also finished the race. Arel congratulated her on a great race, and Dion replied that she wouldn't lose next time. Skyke took 3rd place and also vowed not to lose next time, then burst into tears like a child. The principal awarded Arel a certificate and a medal. Afterward, Arel went to discuss his promotion, and the principal immediately agreed, but he was also curious to know where Arel had learned this flight magic. Arel said he learned flight magic in class, but the principal didn't believe him and said he wouldn't force him to reveal it. Arel didn't understand what the principal was implying. Kaido was excited to learn that his master, Arel, would be admitted to Class 2 at every academy. But Arel reminded him that he still hadn't finished at the White and Yellow academies. Colette was showing off the medal to Kufa, saying she wanted to wear it too. Kufa, on the other hand, was wondering about the White and Yellow academies, where students learn support and attack-type magic. She was also curious about the promotion exam. Arel explained that he had a rough idea about the Yellow Academy. It's a place where students can present their magical research, and if someone scores high on their presentation, they don't have to take an exam to be promoted. Kaido asked if Arel was researching anything, and he replied that he had been practicing his flight magic even in his sleep. Kufa wanted to know what final research topic Arel had chosen. Arel answered that he was interested in studying golems, Golems are puppets made of earth, and Kufa remarked that the topic seemed rather simple. Kaido suggested that instead of earth-based magic, Aurel could try something like alchemy. But Aurel explained that golems could take on dangerous or strenuous jobs for humans, and that creating them was actually a useful type of magic for everyday life. Kufa realized that he was aiming for a high score. Aurel said that most of the development was complete, with only the presentation left to do, and everyone hoped that things would go smoothly. At the Yellow Academy Center, Aurel was trying to sign up for the presentation, but had forgotten to register before the deadline. He asked if there was any way for him to participate, but the center staff member said that it was impossible to join without having registered, as the list had already been finalized and there was a large number of participants. She suggested Aurel wait for the next presentation session. Aurel explained that he had created a completely new type of golem, but she said that even so, she had no way of verifying it. Another person overheard their conversation and asked Aurel if he was interested in golem research. He praised Aurel's vision and told him to leave everything to him. Aurel didn't know who this person was. And the man asked if Aurel wanted to create a golem of his own. The teacher offered to register Aurel as a research assistant in his lab, but the person in charge argued that this wouldn't be fair to the first-year students. The man was none other than Professor Rockwell. Aurel asked if he could present his golem if he became the professor's assistant, and Rockwell agreed. Aurel accepted the offer, which made Professor Rockwell very happy and excited for the upcoming presentation. However, the staff member looked unhappy, prompting Aurel to ask if there was a problem. She explained that although Rockwell has a simple appearance, he is extremely skilled at developing golems and frequently presents his new variations. In particular, he focuses on combat golems, but that wasn't a problem for Aurel. However, she said that Rockwell has a habit of randomly picking a student to face off against his golem, which makes him unpopular and makes it difficult for him to find an assistant. So, Rockwell always proactively seeks out students who will agree to be his assistant. The person in charge said Aurel could back out if he wanted, but he still signed up to be Rockwell's assistant to get a chance to present his golem, since he had no other options. On the day the instructors were to present their new inventions, the commentator invited everyone to pay attention to the exciting earth magic demonstration. Kufa asked why Kato seemed so bored, and he replied that during the alchemy presentation, he was hoping to see unique minerals created by magic, but in reality, it was all just theses, which he found incredibly dull. Colette said that Kaido did a good job coming back early because it was almost Aurel's turn. The audience was thrilled to hear that Rockwell was up next. He announced that he would deliver an amazing presentation on battle golems, and everyone began to murmur. Rockwell was known as a teacher who often made his students quit. Hearing this, Kufa felt a sense of dread. Rockwell demonstrated the golems he had built. Kaido remarked that these golems were very different from the ones they had seen in the village. This was the first time they had seen battle golems. Rockwell declared that his golems would fight against the one Aurel had created, and told Aurel to get his golem ready. Aurel was already prepared and summoned Alpha, his golem, to appear. Everyone was astonished to see the golem Aurel had made and wondered if it was made of metal. There was no rule stating that golems had to be made from earth, so Aurel's creativity with Alpha stunned the audience. Aurel explained that he had created this golem using alchemy and that it moved thanks to earth magic. People were amazed to see the red metallic material they had never seen before, and asked if it was a new type of mineral. Kufa commented that Aurel always had something unique to show, while Kaido was beaming with pride for his master. Rockwell laughed and told Aurel to stop joking. He argued that metal was too heavy to be controlled with earth magic. Rockwell suspected that someone was controlling the golem from the inside and opened its head, but there was no one inside. Its material was also as light as paper. Rockwell guessed that Aurel had reduced its power to make the golem more agile. Even so, Rockwell was confident that his golem could destroy Aurel's in a single blow. Rockwell declared that he wouldn't hold back and would show Aurel the strongest golem he had ever created. The battle between the two golems began, moving so fast that dust flew everywhere, preventing Kaito and the others from seeing Errol clearly. When the dust settled, everyone was shocked to realize that Rockwell's golem had lost. Rockwell was astonished, unable to believe that a metal golem, which shouldn't be durable, could be so powerful. He became serious and ordered his golem to repair its damaged parts while reinforcing its components. Then, he demanded the match restart. One of Rockwell's greatest advantages was his vast reserve of magical energy, allowing him to easily control many smaller golems at once. Rockwell declared that Arl's golem wouldn't be able to stop all of his golems with just 2 hands and told everyone to witness the power of the world's strongest golem user. As Rockwell used a numbers strategy, Errol thought it would be more advantageous to use a weapon. His golem then revealed several swords, which made Kaito incredibly excited to watch. Rockwell remarked that a golem with a sword might look strong, but he was still confident in his advantage. Rockwell asserted that a golem can only move according to the controller's skill and is just a puppet. Precise movements are impossible unless the controller is skilled in swordsmanship. And yet, in the blink of an eye, Rockwell's golems were destroyed. Kaito didn't understand what had just happened and remarked that it was an amazing performance. A surprised Rockwell asked Errol what he did, and Errol replied that he had just slashed Rockwell's golems. Rockwell wondered how Errol could do that in a single move. And Errol was also puzzled, as he had never seen anything like it either. Rockwell argued that a golem couldn't move with the precision of swordsmanship. But Errol explained that with metal, it was possible. Normally, an earth golem dissolves when the controller runs out of magic, but a metal golem retains its shape even without magic. Therefore, the controller can focus all their energy on movement without having to keep the golem stable. Arl explains the mechanism of his golem. A golem requires less magic, and this is the result of his research. Rockwell admits that Arl's reasoning is perfectly sound and the proof is right before his eyes. Arl then asks if he can take the promotion exam. Rockwell asks if Arel only came to the presentation to qualify for the promotion exam, and Arel confirms that he did. Professor Rockwell says that won't work, because Errol hasn't had enough time to get used to his role as an assistant. He argues that Errol's talent in alchemy and his golem control skills would be wasted if he remained in Class 1. Rockwell proposes that if Errol agrees to join his research lab, he will speak to the headmaster about promoting him. It sounds reasonable to Errol, but the audience wonders if Errol knows what he's getting himself into. In the end, Arl was promoted and remarks that Rockwell is a good teacher, though Kufa is somewhat skeptical about that. Now, only the White Academy remains. Errol knocks on an office door and is greeted by a woman named Kaide. She says that while Errol might be the top student in Class 1, she still has to test his skills with a practical exam. Kaide invites Arl to follow her to the exam location. Arl asks if she's all right, being unable to see, but Kaide explains that although her eyes can't see, she can sense the magical power around her and navigate just fine. She says her ability to sense is far superior to normal vision. Kaide can even see the magical power of others and senses that Errol's body contains many different types of coexisting magic. She's surprised that she can't see the limit of his magical energy, but for now, everything is stable, and the magics within his body aren't reacting with each other, maintaining a balance. As they approach a cave, she explains that the exam will take place underground, near the White Academy, where there is a tomb containing the betrayed royalty of a long-fallen emperor. Due to the magical energy that has accumulated over centuries, the place has turned into a dungeon teeming with the undead. Arel notices a light in the distance, but Katie warns him to be careful, because the undead will try to extinguish any light source. As they venture deeper, they seem to be surrounded by phantoms that vanish one by one. Arl is moving so fast that Katie has to ask him to stop for a moment. He's using light magic to attack the undead, and asks if they are still far from the exam site. But Katie tells him that his task was to eliminate all the undead in the area, which he has completed brilliantly, despite using only a fraction of his magic. Kaede says she will protect him on the way back, But Errol replies that he only used about 10% of his power. She exclaims that she now fully understands his capabilities and that this is the first time she's ever advanced so far into the dungeon. When Errol uses Holy Ray to attack an evil entity that suddenly appears, Kaede couldn't sense its presence until Arl struck, because the entity could completely conceal its aura. The evil entity doesn't disappear even after being hit, and speaks, asking Errol what he's doing. Arl doesn't give it a chance to introduce itself. Saying it's only polite to wait, he proceeds to use Holy Cross to destroy it. Errol says it's time to head back, but Kaede warns that the monster he just defeated might have been a high-level undead. Errol also notes that it could talk, indicating it was no ordinary opponent. Errol remarks that the entity was different from the other undead. Kaede is curious about the Holy Cross skill, saying that only exorcists with expensive training and special skills can use that type of light magic. Errol asks if it's really that different from Holy Ray. But when she sees he doesn't want to explain further, she doesn't press him. Later, Arl informs the group that he has completed the exam at the White Academy. Kaido is thrilled that Arl has now conquered all the academies. Currently, Arl is in the library of the Black Academy, which is filled with books. A talking skull named Ratalia suddenly appears before him, head upside down, shouting excitedly. Arl doesn't hesitate to slice Ratalia's head off in an instant. She readjusts her head and asks why he did that, to which Errol replies it's because she was bothering him while he was reading. Afterwards, Errol asks Ratalia about a detail in a book, and she leads him to a room behind the library. The door is quite sturdy, but the inside is completely empty. When Errol asks about the room's purpose, Ratalia explains that this is a place to practice all the magic mentioned in the books. Errol remarks that at other academies, students can usually practice magic outside. Due to the dangerous power of dark magic, students can't practice it outdoors as it would endanger other students. Errol decides to try out a grimoire and start searching for a book. He finds one titled Magic to Turn Humans into Beastmen, and then come across a book with no title and no author's name. As he flips through the pages, he feels a fundamental power emanating from the book, which made him curious to see where it led. Errol noted that this was a form of high-level magic. Suddenly, a human-like creature with large ears appeared and praised Errol for doing a great job. It said that thanks to Errol, it was able to escape. Errol was confused, not knowing who this creature was. Though it looked human, its presence gave off a completely different feeling. Errol asked if it was a demon, and the creature replied that it was an excellent guess. It revealed that it had been sealed and that there would be no way for Errol to protect himself. The demon said it had been imprisoned for a very long time, and no one had ever touched the books in that gloomy area. To the demon, Errol was its savior. It asked if there was anything Errol desired, and it would try to grant it, but Errol had no such requests. The demon told Errol not to refuse, as it needed a catalyst to return to the demon world, specifically Errol's flesh and blood. The demon declared that it would take those things for itself. Errol immediately used an explosion spell, but the demon was completely unharmed. Errol was surprised that the magic had no effect, even though he was sure the formula was correct. The demon laughed, explaining that Errol's magic couldn't work because he was inside a barrier it had already set up, which blocked all forms of magic. It was the perfect trap to eliminate a mage. Without magic, the demon thought Errol would be unable to fight back. The demon mocked him, saying that Errol was useless without magic, and told him to accept his death. Errol drew his sword, saying he would fight with this instead. The demon scoffed, asking if Errol intended to attack it with that stick. Errol leaped into the air and slashed at the demon, but the attack didn't have the desired effect. He wondered if this demon was a type of undead like Ratalia, so cutting off its head probably wouldn't work. The demon laughed loudly but was also surprised to see that Errol, despite being a mage, could use physical attacks. It asked if Errol was a magic swordsman, as it hadn't anticipated this at all. Errol replied that he didn't belong to any class, which confused the demon even more. He continued to attack, But it still didn't seem to be doing any damage. The demon taunted that Arl was just wasting his time. But this time, Errol noticed the demon's peculiar structure. Realizing a potential weakness might be hidden inside, he slashed at the demon repeatedly, giving it no chance to counterattack. The demon wasn't dying, but Errol's magic was draining all of its power. Although it had no injuries, the demon was getting smaller and smaller. Finding this interesting, Errol wanted to continue to see just how small it could shrink. The demon panicked, begging Errol to stop and saying that if he continued, it would disappear completely. Errol asked if the demon wanted to live, and when the demon begged for its life, Errol agreed to let it go, but on one condition. He said that he had used a subjugation spell, a type of magic he had always wanted to test out. The demon screamed, enraged at having to become the servant of an inferior human. Arl warned that if the demon tried to resist, it would suffer immense pain. He explained that since demons are resistant to physical damage, he had made sure the spell would inflict mental damage instead. The demon sighed, remarking that Errol seemed more like a demon than it did, which made Errol dislike its attitude. The demon immediately apologized, calling him master. Kaido stared at the tiny demon, amazed by its new form. The demon rested on Kaido's hand, making him wonder if it was his master's spirit beast. The demon irritably asked Kaido if he was aware of who he was talking to. Kufa told Kaido not to tease Errol's pet, and Kaido began to lightly poke the demon with his finger. Infuriating it when it heard itself being called a pet, Colette apologized and handed the demon back to Errol, but he told her not to worry, as the demon wouldn't die from that. Kufa started pulling on the demon, making Kaido say that she was even worse than him. He ordered the demon to bring bread from the dining hall, and the demon yelled that its name was Mastima, and not to treat it like an errand boy. But upon seeing the look in Errol's eyes, it reluctantly left to carry out the order. Mastima tried to maintain its dignity and told Errol that it would be free soon enough. It had considered killing Errol in his sleep, but realized that Errol stayed up all night, leaving it confused and unable to understand who or what Errol truly was. Model: